Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to the 10th Grand Prix of 2025, and it's race day, of course, in Montreal for the Canadian Grand Prix, one of the most anticipated Grand Prix of the season, because it is so usually great. We always get great races in. Normally, the best races of the season tend to happen here in Montreal, and with the grid we have got for this race, it promises a lot. It really does. It is perfectly mixed up. We've got three different teams in the top three positions on the grid. And genuinely, we have got three different teams today that can win the Canadian Grand Prix. It's going to be maybe not quite as great as last year's Grand Prix, which was a classic, but it won't be far off, I don't think. It's going to be very, very good. Also, strategy-wise, it's going to be very exciting because we are promised a two-stop race, I think, by most cars, given the tyre wear we're seeing with the tyres here in Montreal. So it's going to be all round a very interesting and very exciting Grand Prix. Many overtakes, I'm sure, will be happening through the Grand Prix. Given how close and competitive the field is in certain areas, yeah, this is going to be a very exciting race. Cannot wait for it, and thankfully we are just under 2 hours away from the beginning of the Canadian Grand Prix. Hello to you guys. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well after yesterday's qualifying if you joined us for that. If you haven't joined us at all this weekend and this is your first time joining me, then hello to you. Hopefully you're doing well. And no matter what's going on in your part of the world, the circumstances, the weather, no matter what, I hope you're all having as good a time as possible. And I hope you'll be joining me today in watching along and enjoying this Canadian Grand Prix, which again promises a lot. Of course, though, if you are unable to watch the race, but you want to keep up to date with what's going on, this is a great place to be, because I'll keep you absolutely up to date with everything going on in this Canadian Grand Prix. Unfortunately, today I will be solo for the stream. Niblo, of course, who's joined me in the last few race watch-alongs, will not be joining me tonight because the timing of this race for the Asia/Australian F1 fans is terrible. So, yeah, he will not be joining me this evening, but he will be back in 2 weeks' time for the Austrian Grand Prix and then the Grand Prix after that, I think a week later at Silverstone, so don't worry, he will be back on commentary very soon. But yeah, will be a solo stream for me today, and of course, we'll go through the usual build-up, looking at what happened in qualifying yesterday, the starting grid we have. Also, we'll go through the data from qualifying to understand why the grid ended up the way it did. And we'll also get into other key bits of data, such as the speed trap data, which is very interesting going into this Grand Prix, especially with the front-running teams. And also, we'll go through the long-run data from Friday, which is also quite interesting. And then I'll get into my, of course, predictions for the race. We'll also get into some tyre information from Pirelli regarding what the best strategy is for today. And I will also go through who has new sets of certain tyres. We'll go through that and what the strategy options are for especially the front running teams in this Grand Prix. And then obviously hear from you guys in the chat. Make sure to keep your comments coming in the chat during the build up to this race. I want to hear from you guys as to what did you think of qualifying, and most importantly, what do you think is going to happen in this race coming up in an hour and 55 minutes. Of course, as usual, there is a poll running in the chat where I've asked you guys who is going to win the Canadian Grand Prix. Will it be George Russell, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, or Lando Norris, starting from 7th on the grid? Who wins this Canadian Grand Prix? Let me know in that poll. And I will, right before we get into the race, go through the results of the poll to see who you guys have voted for. I'm expecting the poll to be maybe not quite as close as it was yesterday, where I think you guys equally voted Norris and Piastri as favourites for pole, but it's going to be close. I have no doubt about it. The polling in the chat. But yeah, we'll see what you guys have to say. We'll see you guys vote for on or in that poll. But yeah, I think we'll just get straight into it and go through, firstly, the results of qualifying. And for the second year in a row, George Russell for Mercedes on pole in Canada. And for the second year in a row, it is Russell and Verstappen on the front row. And that is a brilliant front row to have, given what happened 2 weeks ago in Spain. And also given that, yes, Max Verstappen is 1 penalty point away on his license from having a race ban for the Austrian Grand Prix. I don't think Verstappen, by the way, is going to get a race ban. I think Max is way too good and way too smart to get himself into a situation today where he could get some more points on his license. But you never know what could happen at the start of the Grand Prix. But yeah, Russell, that pole position, that was arguably the best pole position of the year. It was a stunning lap. It wasn't, I don't think it was quite the best. I think it was, I think Verstappen's lap at Suzuka is probably still the best pole position of the year. But I think Russell's has to be right up there for him to be a 10th.5 clear of Verstappen, given just how good Max was yesterday, was just incredible from Russell. So yeah, and the only driver to dip into the 1 minute 10s, which I thought was possible, but unlikely. But Russell did a 1 minute 10.899. That is an absolutely stunning lap time. And yeah, Max Verstappen did a great job himself, but in the end, it still was not enough. I think we have to say the Mercedes did prove to be quicker in qualifying than the Red Bull, as it has proven to be all weekend in say, quali trim. The Mercedes has looked quicker than the Red Bull, but Red Bull certainly were a lot closer in qualifying than I think we were expecting, given the weekend that Red Bull had. So yeah, Max still had a great qualifying and he's still in a great position to possibly win this race. Oscar Piastri third. He should be disappointed to a degree because there was more pace definitely in that McLaren. Probably not for pole, but I think definitely for the front row, given that he was only a few hundredths of a second away. So yeah, Piastri, again, I think to a degree will be disappointed, but he could still win this race despite being third and having 2 very strong drivers ahead of him who are looking quick. So, yeah, Piastri, not the end of the world whatsoever. A lot more the end of the world for Lando Norris, his teammate. So, yeah, Piastri still in a decent position and can still absolutely win this Grand Prix. I still expect the McLaren in clear air to be the fastest car today. Not by a million miles. I think it'll only be by maybe a 10th or 2. But, yeah, I still think McLaren in clear air today should just about have the best car. Antonelli fourth, half a second off his teammate. Now, part of that gap, I think, is Antonelli probably not doing the best lap, but also Russell doing an absolutely stunning lap, I think, is part of why that gap is so big. Antonelli, though, I don't think you could expect him to be any higher on the grid than fourth, given where his teammate is. So, yeah, I think Antonelli did absolutely fine. Lewis Hamilton fifth. A good result for Hamilton, considering his lack of pace compared to Leclerc. Leclerc only a 10th.5 slower than Hamilton, and Leclerc obviously bottled his final lap. So, yeah, Hamilton in a better position than really he deserves to be in, because if Norris and Leclerc had shown their actual proper pace at the end of qualifying, Hamilton probably would have ended up 7th. But yeah, Hamilton, he delivered in the end, took advantage of Norris and Leclerc having a bit of a mess up, towards the end of Q3, and he starts 5th. But yeah, I think Hamilton a bit higher on the grid pace-wise than he probably should be. Fernando Alonso 6th. What a brilliant qualifying from Fernando. 3rd row of the grid. And even though he's third row of the grid, I still think he'll be slightly disappointed not to have got ahead of Hamilton, because I think it was probably possible. But Alonso, in the end, was just a few hundredths of a second away. But yeah, Fernando, still, what a result. Third row of the grid. And qualifying, I think where he did for this Grand Prix last year, which was sixth. If you could finish sixth, like he did last year at this Grand Prix, then that would be a fantastic result. Lando Norris seventh. Humiliating performance from him in Q3, to the point where his engineer was literally having to tell him how to drive the car in terms of where to brake, where to place his car in terms of the racing line. It was quite humiliating what we had to witness with Lando Norris in Q3. And yet again, Lando shows us why he is very likely, despite being in the fastest car on the grid, showing again why he is very likely to not win the World Championship, because he just continuously flops on his face when it matters. Charles Leclerc 8th. Leclerc disappointing with the mistake he made. I know the Ferrari car has its issues with the handling, but yeah, Leclerc, I think, had a pretty good chance of a second row grid slot and could have maybe got in there with Verstappen and Piastri to a degree. I think Leclerc, though, would have ultimately ended up in fourth. I don't think Ferrari had pole position level pace, but they definitely could have been right in the fight for the podium today if Leclerc had, actually done the lap that he should have done at the end of qualifying. So, yeah, Ferrari now in a tricky position, because they've probably got the pace to fight for a podium, but of course they are way out of position for that. So, yeah, getting a podium today is gonna require quite a bit of luck, I think, for them. Well-timed safety car, something like that, to get them onto or even close to a podium finish. Isaac Hadjar qualified ninth, but was given a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Carlos Sainz. Deservedly, it was a horrible case of impeding from Hadjar. A shame, because he once again made Q3, and I thought he did a brilliant job to outqualify the Williams of Albon and end up ninth. Really delivering the absolute best he could have in that car. You can't ask any more of Isaac from what he did in qualifying yesterday. But yeah, he's going to start in P12, but he should be able to make progress from there. The car definitely is a bit quicker than that position. And then Alex Albon 10th. Williams, I thought, were quite disappointing yesterday. Race pace, though, does look good from Williams, so maybe they will be stronger today. But yeah, I thought yesterday they were very disappointing. And then with the rest of the field, Yuki Tsunoda 11th. I still think Tsunoda, despite him getting a 10-place penalty for red flag infringement, which is bullshit, by the way, because the infringement he committed was overtaking Oscar Piastri under a red flag. Piastri, though, was touring back to the pits very slowly because Piastri had picked up a puncture from hitting the wall of champions. Surely common sense should prevail in regards to investigating that incident. Tsunoda should not have to go at the same speed as Piastri all the way to, the pit lane just to avoid overtaking Piastri. That should not be the case. Again, common sense really missing from the stewards there. But in regards to qualifying yesterday, I still think Tsunoda could have got into the top 10. He didn't do, I think, as good of a final lap as he could have done. But yeah, disappointing that he's got that penalty and he starts pretty much at the back. Franco Colapinto then, who qualified 12th, will start in the top 10. Who thought he would be starting in the top 10 after the return to Formula One he's had, which has been so bad, since he came back at the, race at Imola about a month ago. 10th on the grid. And you know what? He genuinely deserves that grid position because he was genuinely very quick yesterday. Yes, Pierre Gasly should have done a better job, and Pierre Gasly should be out qualifying Colapinto no matter what, really, because Gasly is clearly a better driver. But let's give Colapinto credit where credit's due. He did a good job yesterday. And P10 on the grid, that's a great place to start for him. And let's see if he scores any points. If he does, then I think he's guaranteeing himself a place at that team long term. Because obviously, Doohan was never able to get a point. So if Colapinto can do that today, then yeah, that will really help his case. Hulkenberg then will start in P11. Hulkenberg doing really the best he could have done in that Sauber. So yeah, watch out for Hulkenberg. Obviously was very quick in the race a couple of weeks ago in Spain. And Sauber definitely have made a step forward since we came to the European races. They've definitely improved, have Sauber. And then you've got the two Haas's, a bit higher on the grid really than they should be, given that the pace of the car has not really been that good this weekend. So yeah, 13th and 14th it will be for the two Haas's. And then 15th, Bortoletto. Carlos Sainz will start 16th. Obviously got knocked out at 17th in Q1 because he got held up by Hadjar. The thing is, though, with Williams, they was I wouldn't say massively disappointing, but they were disappointing to the point where I'm not sure if Carlos had made it through to Q2. I'm not sure he would have really ended up with a great qualifying anyway, because Williams just didn't do that well in quali. So, yeah, Carlos, a bit lower on the grid than he should be, but he should make some progress. And then it'll be Lance Stroll 17th. Liam Lawson 18th, and then Yuki Tsunoda will start 19th because Pierre Gasly will be starting from the pit lane as Alpine have took his car out of Parc Ferme and made a load of changes to the car, which is no problem doing that because obviously he is way out of position on the grid. Gasly should be hovering around 10th, 11th place on the grid, given where the Alpine car pace-wise is at this weekend. But yeah, Gasly obviously had a horrible qualifying session. So yeah, we'll see what Gasly can do from the pit lane. But that is your starting grid and your qualifying results for the Canadian Grand Prix. Let's go through, though, the sector time data just to understand why we've got the grid we have. Now, the first sector is all really about downforce, and through there, surprising results. McLaren not as quick through this part of the lap as they were on Friday, and not as quick as you would have expected. They were actually the slowest of the front four teams. Ferrari, slightly quicker than Red Bull. Leclerc and Verstappen absolutely on it in the first sector. Mercedes, pretty quick as well. And yeah, McLaren, the slowest. That is a surprise, and that is definitely partly why McLaren did not get a pole yesterday. Williams, pretty good, and Aston Martin as well, pretty good in the first sector, and then a bit of a drop-off to Racing Bulls, Alpine, Haas, and once again, Sauber, losing quite a bit of time in the first sector. If it wasn't for that first sector, Sauber would be probably in the top 10, or just about in the top 10, because their car in the rest of the lap looks pretty good, but in the first sector, it's clearly the worst car. And then the middle sector, which is pretty simple. You've got two slow to medium speed chicanes, and Mercedes incredibly fast through this part of the lap, a tenth of a second quicker than the next car being Red Bull. And then McLaren, very surprisingly, 0.2 off Mercedes. Again, that is very surprising. McLaren just not proving to be really anywhere near as quick as I think we expected coming into the weekend. I don't think this is because of a new upgrade by any, the other teams. I think this is just a track related thing. This track just doesn't mesh as well with that McLaren as, say, the Circuit de Catalunya track we went to a couple of weeks ago does. Saying that, I still think McLaren in race conditions, in clear air, will have the fastest car, but won't be by as much as it was a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, McLaren definitely not having a great time. And then Ferrari a quarter of a second away. But that is with Lewis Hamilton. We know Leclerc, if he had done a proper final lap, he would have been probably, a couple tenths of a second quicker than Hamilton. So Leclerc in this part of the lap probably would have been at least a tenth quicker than Hamilton. So Ferrari probably, potentially, were quicker than McLaren in the middle sector and maybe on about the same pace as Red Bull, but I don't think they would have been matching Mercedes in this part of the lap had Leclerc shown the real potential of the car. Aston Martin, though, and Williams once again looking good. Alpine as well, pretty competitive. And then Haas a bit closer to the other midfield teams through this part of the lap. And then, surprisingly, Racing Bulls, the slowest team in the middle part of the lap, which you don't really see at all with them be the slowest in any part of the lap in qualifying. And it's also quite surprising given that if you look here, then in the final sector, they're the quickest midfield team. So, yeah, I don't really know why that is. But McLaren, out of nowhere, suddenly finding pace in the final sector, which is a bit surprising because the final sector is probably, you'd imagine, with their car, it should be the weakest part of the lap for them, given the two long straights that we've got in the final sector. But McLaren somehow were able to find quite a bit more pace in the final sector. Mercedes also pretty quick. Red Bull ultimately 2 tenths off, which is surprising given the top speed that Red Bull had down the straights yesterday, which I'll show in a moment, because Red Bull were very quick in a straight line yesterday. Ferrari, again, Leclerc, the final sector he did there, that was from his, I think, his first lap in Q3. If he had done another lap, I think Leclerc probably could have been on the same pace as Mercedes. So, yeah, definitely more pace in that Ferrari car in the final sector. And then, yeah, Racing Bulls suddenly go from being the slowest team in the middle sector to the quickest midfield team in the final sector. That is quite baffling, to be honest. Aston Martin then followed by Williams, and then Sauber, Haas, and Alpine. No surprise, the slowest, given their top speed disadvantages. But through the lap, I mean, as you can see, the first sector, Ferrari and Red Bull, the two quickest teams, and then you've got Mercedes and Red Bull, and then McLaren and Mercedes. It's not, there's not one team really that was clearly by a significant amount the quickest team. It was shared out really through the lap, and that's why it's been so competitive and close this weekend between between all of the front running teams, because through all parts of the lap there is no real dominant force around this Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve. But before we go on to the speed trap data, one thing I do want to just quickly go on to is the pecking order coming into the race. So in qualifying, honestly, I still think McLaren have got just about the best car. In qualifying, I'd say Mercedes were probably the quickest compared to everybody else. But I think in race conditions, I still think that McLaren by a tenth or two will have, in clear air, the advantage over the rest. After that, though, it's pretty hard to say who is where. Mercedes and Red Bull, I think, are on pretty much similar pace. I don't think there is a lot whatsoever between those two. Ferrari, I think, definitely the slowest of the front four teams. I think that's clear to see in both quali trim and I think race trim as well. I think they just don't have the pace of the other three front-running teams. And then after that, Aston Martin, you'd have to say the quickest midfield team, followed, I still think, by Williams. I don't think Williams showed their true potential in qualifying. So I think Williams will be a decent bit quicker in the race today. And then Racing Bulls, I would say 7th quickest, 8th quickest, Alpine, 9th quickest, Sauber, and then still the slowest team, Haas, which again is, with where they are on the grid, 13th and 14th. That is quite impressive, them being in that grid position, given that they do have the slowest car overall. But in terms of the front 3 teams, again, it's very close. I reckon 0.2 of a second at most separate those front 3 teams on pace today in the Grand Prix. But ultimately, we will see how it plays out lap time wise over the course of the Grand Prix. One important thing to get into, though, is the speed trap data. Now, this speed trap data is from the speed trap located at the end of the back straight before the final chicane. And Red Bull, by far, the fastest team. Now, that top speed of 336.1 kilometers an hour, that is not because Max got a slipstream from someone, because Tsunoda in the other Red Bull did almost the exact same speed in that speed trap. So Red Bull have took a bit of wing off and are genuinely down the straights incredibly quick. And as you can see, compared to Mercedes, or the Mercedes of Antonelli, 4 kilometers an hour quicker. George Russell, though, if you go look at the speed trap for all 20 drivers, Russell was down near the bottom and actually did, I think it was a speed trap of 329.7 kilometers an hour. That is, between Verstappen's 336 and what Russell did, that is a massive difference. Now, just imagine Verstappen behind Russell today has DRS. The speed difference down that back straight is going to be absolutely monumental. So, not just is the start very important today between Russell and Verstappen, but from Russell's point of view, he has to push immediately, soon as they exit the first couple corners, because if he has Max within a second of him with DRS, then Max is going to overtake him at some point, because again, the speed difference down the straights is absolutely massive. And Russell, no matter how great he is, will not be able to keep Max behind with that speed difference. So yeah, Russell will have to do basically a Sebastian Vettel from like 10 years ago or 12, 13 years ago, back in his Red Bull days, where Vettel would pull over a second's gap basically after one lap or so to ensure that the driver behind did not have DRS. Russell will have to do exactly that if he wants to win this Grand Prix. But again, if Max is within a second of Russell, then eventually Max is going to overtake him with that speed difference. It's inevitable, especially with the amount of DRS zones we have around this Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve. And also for McLaren, if McLaren are ahead of Max and Max has DRS, again, Max is going to find his way past. So yeah, that is, in terms of down the straights today, Max Verstappen is the man to watch out for, because his speed down those straights is incredible compared to everybody else. And if he's within a second of someone, it's going to take a monumental defense to keep him behind. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, McLaren, they're doing a good top speed. That might be, with McLaren there, that might be why through the corners they're not quite doing so well, because they've decided to take a bit of wing off to make sure they're not too slow down the straights. That could be why they weren't so great in qualifying. We'll see if that pays them back in the race. Ferrari's top speed is good. Aston Martin's as well. That's, by the looks of it, why Aston Martin have been so quick this weekend. Williams is good as well. Racing Bulls, not too bad. And then you can see Haas, as usual, at the absolute back. Yeah, Haas have struggled with their top speed all season long. If they had an extra 2 to 3 kilometers an hour, Haas probably could have been, I don't know, probably 11th, maybe even in the top 10 on the grid today. That is what it is costing them, especially around a track like this. But yeah, those are the top speeds. Again, watch out for the Red Bull of Verstappen. His top speed is monumental. And also, keep an eye on Tsunoda and the other Red Bull, because of course he's starting from the back of the grid. And he, thankfully, has been helped by his team in having a very good top speed. But one more thing before we go on to my predictions that I want to just go on to is, of course, the long run data from Friday, where the teams do their long runs and we get to see, in general, what the race pace is looking like for a particular Grand Prix. And Mercedes looking pretty good on that front, about the same pace as McLaren. Red Bull only a tenth of a second per lap on average off the pace of Russell. Now, everyone in these long runs were doing their long runs on the medium compound tyre, except for Hülkenberg in the Sauber, who did his long run on the hard compound tyre, and Fernando Alonso did his long run on the soft compound tyre. That's why Alonso used so many sets of the medium compound tyre yesterday, because they were saving them through practice. That's why Alonso did a soft tyre long run on Friday. So Alonso can be a lot quicker with his long runs. I think Alonso will be maybe not the quickest midfield runner in the race today, but he'll be quick enough to, I think, finish at the head of the midfield pack. Watch out, though, for Hülkenberg, because even though he was on probably the best race tyre for that long run out of anyone, if you take away the advantage he would have had from that, he still would be, compared to the other midfield teams, pretty quick. So I think Hülkenberg may just have enough pace to finish in the top 10, especially if we get a couple DNFs from, say, a couple front-running teams. So watch out for Hülkenberg today. He is in the midfield, he is a dark horse, I think, for this race today. But yeah, Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, all on the same pace, which I've been saying they are going to be closely matched today. Ferrari, though, as you can see, quite a bit off. Now, that is with Lewis Hamilton on the medium compound tyre. If you were to take away a couple tenths for, say, Charles Leclerc, if he had done a long run, because, of course, Leclerc did not do any running in practice 2 because he had broke his chassis in practice 1, Ferrari's pace still wouldn't be that good. It would still be slower than Williams. I think they'll be quicker than Sauber. But yeah, Ferrari's race pace does not look very good. And yeah, it will definitely be the slowest of the front 4 teams. But watch out for Williams, because they were the quickest midfield team by far on the medium tyre on the long runs. Like I said, Sauber did their long run on the hard tyre. So watch out for Williams. They might be a lot quicker today than they were yesterday. So yeah, there's the long runs, and we'll see if it does play out this way. Again, keep your eyes on Hülkenberg, Albon, Sainz, and we'll see how those do in the midfield. But finally, before we go on to tyres and strategy for today, let me just quickly get into my final race prediction for this Canadian Grand Prix. And just about, I think Max Verstappen will win the Canadian Grand Prix. And the key will be that top speed he has. I think he will get past Russell in the first 10 laps. And then, because Piastri will have a bit of work to do to get past Russell himself, that will allow Max to build a slight gap. Oscar will catch that gap back up. But in the end, I think with the top speed Max has got, Max, I think, has enough pace in himself today to get the job done. And just about by 1 second, I think he'll be on track. Max Verstappen will win the Canadian Grand Prix, and he absolutely has to for his World Championship. Oscar Piastri, I think, will finish in second, which would still be a good result for him, given that Lando Norris is not going to finish ahead of him unless Norris really gets fortunate in the race today with a safety car or something. George Russell, I think, will finish third. Mercedes have not been very quick over race distances in the last 3-4 races. So, yeah, I think that trend will continue, sadly. But Russell will still finish on the podium. And then Lando Norris will progress, obviously, because that car is a lot quicker than 7th on the grid. And Lando will finish 4th. And then I'm going Antonelli 5th, just ahead of Leclerc 6th, Hamilton 7th, Alonso 8th, Albon 9th, and Isaac Hadjar, I think, will claim the final point in P10. So that's my race prediction. Let me know in the chat, guys. Do you agree? Disagree? Who do you think wins the race today? What is your top 3 or top 5 for the race today? Let me know in the live chat, and I'll get to your comments soon enough, as we have got just under an hour and a half to go until lights out in Montreal. And I'll just get the timer back on screen when the next minute ticks over. And then we're going to quickly, for a few minutes, go on to race strategy. And we'll go through what Pirelli have said is the best strategy for the race today. So there you go. Hour and 23 minutes to go until lights out. By the way, make sure to smash the like button if you haven't already. As I can see, we're on 20 likes. Let's try and get up to 40 plus likes if we can in the next half an hour. That'd be great if we could do that. Anyway, let me quickly go to the Pirelli X account and go through the race strategies. So according to Pirelli, they think the most likely strategies for today is a 2-stop. There is, though, an option for a 1-stop strategy, which I have also thought is definitely an option today. But let's go through the 2-stop options that Pirelli are saying is most likely. So the first one is starting on the medium compound, pitting between lap 15 and 21, going on to a set of hard tyres, pitting again between lap 39 and 45, and then finishing the race on a set of hard tyres. Or you could start on the mediums, pit a bit later between lap 18 and 24, go on to a set of hard tyres, pit a bit later for the second stint between lap 43 and 49, and then finish the race instead on mediums rather than hard compound tyres. Or the third option is start on the soft compound tyre, which I don't think is going to happen. I don't think anyone's going to try that. But it is an option according to Pirelli. Start on the soft tyre, pit between lap 8 and 14, go on to a set of hard tyres, pit again between lap 36 and 42, and then finish the race on another set of hard tyres. Again, though, I would be very surprised if we saw anyone start the race on the soft tyre. There is, though, a 1-stop option according to Pirelli, which is start on the medium, pit between lap 24 and 30, and then finish the race on a set of hard tyres. I do also think the other 1-stop option of starting on the hard tyre is possible, where if you would start on the hard tyre, you'd probably pit around, between lap 35 and 40, and then finish the race on a set of mediums. I do think that's a possible strategy today. Whether anyone actually goes for it, though, we'll have to see. But yeah, I do think a 1-stop race today is possible. So yeah, we will see if anyone does ultimately decide to try that. But let's go through quickly who has what sets of tyres. So, Oscar Piastri, and actually not just Piastri, both McLarens have 2 new sets of hard tyres and 1 new set of mediums. So I think that pretty much sorts out what McLaren are doing on strategy. They will be probably starting on the medium and then going on to 2 new sets of hard tyres at some point. Ferrari also have the same. So Ferrari, I think, will probably do the same. Saying that, though, Ferrari have split their strategy a couple times this season with what tyre they've started on. So I do think that is maybe a possibility that, say, Lewis Hamilton may start on the hard tyre and go a bit longer into the race, but we'll have to see. Max Verstappen, though, only has 2 new sets of hard tyres. He does not have any new sets of mediums or new sets of soft tyres. So Max will have to start. If he starts with a medium, it will be a scrubbed set. But from what I understand, that scrub set is only got, 3 laps on it. So it's not going to be a massive difference compared to a new set of mediums that, say, McLaren will have. Mercedes, interestingly, do not have any new sets of mediums either, but they do have 1 new set each of hard tyres. So I'm wondering with Red Bull and Mercedes whether they might use 2 sets of mediums today, and maybe McLaren are going to use 2 sets of hard tyres. So we'll see what happens with that. I think if you're Mercedes and Red Bull with the tyres they've got left, I think that's probably what you would do, is use two sets of the medium and then only use 1 set of the hard compound tyre. Regarding Aston Martin, by the way, Aston Martin do not have any new sets of tyres available. Lance Stroll does, obviously, because he did not even get through to Q2. But for Fernando Alonso, Fernando has no new sets of tyres. He has 2 used set of hard tyres and 3 used sets of mediums. So Alonso is at a slight disadvantage, and that will cost him over the course of the Grand Prix, maybe a few seconds, given the slight bit extra tyre wear that his tyres will have gone through. So that is not going to help him. Alex Albon, by the way, he's starting in the top 10, and he has 2 new sets of hard tyres. So I think Albon is someone who will probably do a strategy of starting on the medium and going onto 2 sets of hard tyres like McLaren will do. But yeah, I think in terms of the strategy differences, McLaren, like Mercedes and Red Bull, they will start on the medium tyre, but I think they will use 2 sets of hard tyres. Meanwhile, for Verstappen, Russell and Antonelli, they'll also start on the medium, but I think they'll go on to another set of medium tyres at some point and only use 1 set of the hard compound tyres. That's what I think they'll probably do there, given how competitive the race will be. Obviously, say Verstappen or Russell, if they are behind on track, they will want to get onto a softer compound to try and get themselves back into play. Be interesting to see with McLaren and with Ferrari as well, who have also got 2 new sets of hards, and they will also do the same as McLaren. They'll start on the medium probably and then go on to 2 sets of hard tyres, or go through both sets of hard tyres between the first pit stop and the end of the Grand Prix. Be interesting to see if that does pay off for those teams. I can see it paying off to a degree for McLaren, but I think Ferrari are a bit too far back on the grid for it to really pay off for them. So yeah, we will see ultimately how that works out. But before I come on to any comments of yours in the chat, one thing I do want to quickly go through is strategically, what should the front running teams do today? Let me just quickly readjust myself in my chair before I get into this. So firstly, Ferrari, again, out of position on the grid. Personally, I would split the strategy with the 2 cars. I would start Lewis Hamilton on a set of hard tyres and just try and run him as long into the race as you can before it gets to the point where he's losing either way too much time or a safety car comes out, to help his race, because of course that would save him quite a few seconds on track if a safety car or a virtual safety car came out at the right time for Hamilton. So that's what I would do. I would start Hamilton on the hard tyre. And if let's say there's no safety car today, which is unrealistic because there's normally always a safety car at this Grand Prix. I would what do you call it? I would start Hamilton on the hard tyre, and I would pit him around lap 35-ish for a set of, or not lap 35, I'd say lap 30, and then put him on a set of mediums, and then you can have the option to either go to the end of the race on that set of mediums, which realistically I don't think they would do, but also you still have the option of another set of hard tyres where he could whack those on for the final, I don't know, 20 laps to be quick at the end. So yeah, I think regardless of whether Lewis is on a one-stop or a two-stop strategy, I would run Hamilton quite a bit longer into the race than the other front runners, because I think it is definitely worth trying to run a bit longer into this race. And also with Leclerc, I think Leclerc should go a few laps longer into the race today than, say, what Verstappen, Russell, and the McLarens will be doing with their strategy. I think Leclerc, personally, I would start him on the medium, and I would run him, say, about 25 to 27 laps into the race. Then put him on probably a set of hard tyres at that point. And then try and get him to, say, lap 50 before you put that final set of hard tyres on. And try and get him higher up the grid by going longer in the first stint and then having fresher tyres for the rest of the race. I think that's the only thing really Ferrari can do to get themselves somehow into the fight for a podium, which would be incredible if they were to get themselves into that fight, because they are quite a bit away from that on the grid with their quickest driver, who's most likely to get a podium in Leclerc. So yeah, that's what I would try, is run longer with the first stint, quite a bit longer, have quite a bit fresher tyres for the rest of the race, and hopefully that can give Ferrari then the pace to maybe fight for a podium or be close to it. We'll see how that goes. Ferrari have proven to be decent with their tyre wear as of late, so yeah, they should be able to do it, but whether they'll have enough pace compared to the rest, ultimately we'll have to see. But yeah, with McLaren, going to be interesting to see what McLaren do. But with Oscar Piastri, I think they're going to do a very simple two-stop strategy. I don't think Piastri is going to do anything that dramatic on strategy. The only thing I could see them doing different compared to, say, Verstappen and Russell is, I think they could run Piastri maybe 3 or 4 laps longer than those two, Verstappen and Russell, to have fresher tyres for the second stint and maybe then the final stint as well. Other than that, though, I don't see them trying anything dramatic like what Ferrari could do in going quite a bit longer. For Lando Norris, I think I think with Lando, they've got to do something similar to what Ferrari have got to do, which is run him quite a bit longer into the race before pitting, so that then he can utilise the pace of the McLaren, especially on fresher tyres, in the rest of the Grand Prix. So, yeah, I think that's what they've got to do there. I think Lando probably, should pit around lap 25, let's say. And then, again, for the rest of the race, he'll have fresher tyres and then be able to come back into things later on. And then in regards to Max Verstappen, all depends really on where he is on track. If he's in the lead, then all he has to do is cover off the cars behind him, and he's got enough tyres to be able to do that and not have to do any dramatic things on strategy. For George Russell, kind of the same. He needs to just, if he's in the lead, and if he's in the lead by a couple seconds, then he needs to just cover off whatever the car behind is doing. I don't think Mercedes with Russell need to try anything extravagant. What will be interesting, though, is because Mercedes have got Antonelli in fourth place, as Pirelli showed there, the first pit stop, if you're starting on the medium, the first pit stop is going to be around, what, lap 15? If Russell is in the lead and Antonelli is in fourth place, then Antonelli is probably going to be, what, 10 seconds at worst off of Russell. The point I'm trying to make is I think they might be able to use Antonelli to hold up Verstappen and Piastri possibly. Not in a way where they would keep Russell out as well to hold up, the others whilst Russell stays out. But I do wonder whether they might try that and maybe run Antonelli, I don't know, an extra 5 laps to maybe hold up Verstappen and Piastri for a lap or two. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Mercedes do use Antonelli strategically. With Ferrari, by the way, with them running longer into the race, which again is what I think they absolutely have to do if they want to get anything from this, anything good from this Grand Prix. If Leclerc, say in the first 10 laps, if he can get past Alonso, which he really should because the Ferrari is quicker, and maybe be let through by his teammate if he is a lot quicker. Let's say by lap 10, Leclerc is in 6th place ahead of Hamilton and Alonso. Then Leclerc, if he does go, say, an extra 10 laps compared to, say, Verstappen and Russell, let's say if they pit around lap 15 and Leclerc pits, say, lap 25-ish, then Leclerc, I don't think is going to lose out too much from doing that. So the reason I'm saying this is purely, if any Ferrari fans out there are concerned that if Leclerc does run that long, that he will lose too much time. I mean, we have to be honest, Ferrari are not fighting for the win today. They're way too far back on the grid to be able to do that, and they don't have enough race pace to be able to come back from where they are on the grid to, fight for the win. But if Leclerc was to go, say, 10 laps longer than, say, Verstappen, if Verstappen was in the lead going into that first round of pit stops, by the time Max pits, Leclerc will probably be, 15 seconds or so behind? Maybe slightly more. So Max, if he comes out behind Leclerc probably after a couple laps would be overtaken by Max, and then Leclerc would obviously stay out a few extra laps. So he would lose, compared to the leaders, he'd probably lose an extra 10 to 12 seconds by staying out another, say, 10 laps compared to Verstappen and Russell, which, would hurt him in terms of his gap to the leaders. But again, he's not fighting for the win today. He's fighting for 3rd place, in my view. That's the absolute best I think Ferrari can get, and they're going to need some luck to get that as well. Definitely a well-timed safety car will have to help Ferrari today if they are to even fight for properly a podium in today's race. So, yeah, I think even though that will hurt a bit for Leclerc compared to the leaders, I think compared to whoever's running around 3rd and 4th place, I think running Leclerc quite a bit longer until, say, lap 25, I think would be a good decision to get him properly into that fight for, say, maybe 3rd or 4th place. But again, ultimately, Leclerc, if he is to get on the podium today, which if he did, that would be a fantastic result, given that, Ferrari are, in a difficult position on the grid. Plus, their pace this weekend has not been that good. Yeah, if he was to get a result like that, that would be absolutely brilliant. But strategy wise, those are the options I think for the front runners. It's going to be very interesting to see who does what. Again, I'm expecting Ferrari to run quite a bit longer into the race, and also Lando Norris. We'll see if Red Bull or Mercedes or the McLaren or Piastri do anything different to what we're expecting here. But we have got just over an hour to go until the race begins in Montreal. So I think we're going to now go through your comments in the chat. Make sure to keep them coming. Glad to have you back, Chaz. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm going to go through your comments now. So make sure to keep them coming. And also, if you haven't voted in the poll yet, make sure to do so. Let me know over the next hour, who do you think wins the Canadian Grand Prix? Will it be Max Verstappen? Will it be George Russell? Will it be Oscar Piastri? Or somehow from 7th on the grid, will it be Lando Norris? Let me know over the next hour or so. But one thing I'm going to do quickly, just mute my microphone, have a quick drink, and then I'll go through a load of your comments for the next half an hour or so. Right, so that's a bit better. Let me raise this picture slightly. Also, one more thing I just want to get into before we get into the race today is a quick update about content for the next 3 weeks. So, obviously, after this Grand Prix, there is a 2-week break into the next Grand Prix in Austria, which I cannot wait for, given how close things are in Formula One right now. I think we're in for a incredibly exciting and close weekend in Austria. But yeah, just want to give you a quick update as to what the content plan is between now and the British Grand Prix, which is in 3 weeks from now, and of course a week after that race in Austria. So obviously I'm doing this watch along today. Tomorrow there will be a podcast covering what happened over the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. And then there will be a video coming out in between this Grand Prix weekend and the Austrian Grand Prix weekend. And hopefully that video will be coming out next or this coming Friday, rather. Just like last was it last week? Yeah, it was last week or last Friday. Where I uploaded that video about why Verstappen should have been disqualified for the Spanish Grand Prix. By the way, if you've not seen that video, there's a link in the description to it. Make sure to go and check it out. Yeah, so there will be a video on the channel coming out on Friday. And then we'll be coming to the Austrian Grand Prix a week after that. I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch along for that weekend. And then, of course, a podcast the day after the Grand Prix to cover what happened in that race. And then a few days later, the following weekend, I'll be doing another qualifying and race watch along for the British Grand Prix. And then, of course, yet again, a podcast the day after covering that race. So yeah, plenty of content coming your way over the next 3 weeks. Both quali and race watch-alongs for the next 2 races after this, and a couple videos, such as podcasts and an in-season video, which should be coming your way next Friday. In terms of the topic of that video, it is quite dependent on what happens in this race today as to what the topic will be. But yeah, it definitely will come out next Friday. Don't know what time next Friday, but it will be next Friday. I'm hoping it will be sometime around early afternoon in the UK is when that video will come out. But yeah, that's the plan for the next 3 weeks. And then, yeah, I'll give you another content update probably when we get to the British Grand Prix in 3 weeks, because, of course, there is a 3-week break in between the British and Belgian Grand Prix, which is a bit extra of a gap for us to have in between races when it's not the summer break. So, yeah, I will give you a new update when we get to the British Grand Prix in 3 weeks as to what the plan will be through the middle of July, as I am also preparing content for the summer break that has begun that process. In terms of how many videos will be coming out over the summer break, I don't know. I'm hoping it will be at least 3 videos, and proper videos in terms of them being quite long, and yeah, hopefully I can get those out, but there might be a couple more on top of that. We'll see. Anyway, let's see what you guys are having to say. Paul James Squibbs, good to see you. You don't come around as much as you used to, I remember in the chat, but good to see you anyway. Another thing quickly I want to say is congratulations to Robert Kubica, who today, or in the last 24 hours, has been racing for Ferrari at the 24-hour of Le Mans race, and he has won for Ferrari at Le Mans. Absolutely brilliant story. Given obviously what happened to him, the rally crash, and plus he had a contract with Ferrari for 2012, so he was going to race for them, but was cruelly denied by the rally crash he had, which nearly took his life. He was lucky to even be able to have a racing career. Still, after that crash, it was a horrific accident he had. But yeah, he recovered from that amazingly well. Still even made his return to Formula One, even though he was obviously way off the pace compared to what he, what he was like before. But still, made the comeback. I think personally for him, received closure for his Formula One career, and still continued to have a brilliant career in endurance racing. Obviously had a heartbreaking, I think, Le Mans a few years ago, but yeah, great to see that, and great that he's still been able to have success in his career given what happened, because he was and is so talented, and what he has done has been so remarkable. I do hope there will be a documentary made at some point about his career, because it's a remarkable career in terms of what he did in Formula One before the accident, and then obviously what's happened since the accident in terms of the recovery he has made, and the what he's been able to accomplish despite his physical limitations since that accident. It really is a very inspirational story. So yeah, congratulations to Kubica. I think the J says Yuki could score big points from 11th. I'm not sure they know that Tsunoda is actually starting 19th because of his red flag penalty. But he should be really starting from there because, again, the penalty was bullshit. But yeah, that is unfortunately the way it goes. Tony Kart Racer gives his prediction, which is Russell to win from Piastri, Lando, Hamilton, Antonelli. And then Max 14th, penalty point, 1 race ban. I still would be amazed if he did get a race ban. Will F1 saying Ferrari could have more pace than their starting positions. Leclerc bottled it in Q3 and Hamilton isn't getting the best out of that car regardless of what his deluded fans say. They'll definitely, I think with Leclerc, they'll definitely improve on where they are, but that Ferrari this weekend is not quick enough to go from 8th with Leclerc up to 3rd. It just isn't. Again, they're going to need a bit of luck to help them because they are, quite a bit out of position on the grid. If Leclerc, though, had done a proper final lap, he would have ended up probably 4th. If he had qualified 4th, I probably would have predicted Leclerc to finish on the podium. But, yeah, he failed to deliver. Crystal Racing saying, yeah, it'll be fun to witness Russell and Verstappen on lap 1. Absolutely. Let's just hope that it's not, them two crashing and taking each other out of the race, because that's not what we want. We want good, hard, fair racing. And we know, though, that those two can do that. They've, I remember, was it the Spanish Grand Prix in 2022? If you go back and watch that race, those two produced some amazing wheel-to-wheel battling for us. So we know they can do it. It's just a matter of the heads being cool enough for it to happen. But Verstappen, obviously, he's not going to try anything ridiculous today because, yes, he is so close to a race ban. But also, we have to remember this race is crucial for Max Verstappen's championship. He has to win today. It is as simple as that. He absolutely must win this race because of what happened in Spain. He's put himself in a predicament where he now has to win races no matter what. So that will be Max's first concern, is win the race no matter what. And the same goes, really, even if he wins this Grand Prix today, he still has to win the next one in Austria. That's how crucial it has become for Max. And if he, if he was to have an accident with Russell at the first corner and be out of the race and Piastri was to go on to win, then at that point, Max, I think his championship would be over. So, yeah, Verstappen has got to make sure that he just gets past Russell, wins the race, and then obviously at the next Grand Prix, he gets, 3 penalty points removed? Because obviously he got some penalty points at the Austrian Grand Prix last year for his collision with Lando Norris, which was bullshit. I don't even think he was at fault for that collision. Let me find some comments here. Tony Kart Racer says Sainz is the biggest joke in F1 that people either don't know any better to see or are just fools because of his good seats or having got a win or two. I would not go that far to say he is the biggest joke in F1. I think Lance Stroll is probably someone who deserves that title. I will say Carlos Sainz, I do think, has been overrated by some people. Especially I know the Matt Gallagher and Tom Bellingham, those two guys. I think they overrate Sainz massively. I remember last season they had Sainz in there. I think after the mid-season, I think one of them had Sainz as the second best driver for the season, and I was like, "Are you mental?" Yeah, Carlos, he's always been a very good driver, but he is not an elite level driver. He is not on the level of Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell. He's not. He's not on that level, and I think this season is helping prove that as well, because Carlos has not been that good this season for Williams. He's had a couple good races, couple good race weekends, but it's been disappointing, really, from Carlos this year. But even when he was at Ferrari, last year you could arguably say was the best season of Carlos Sainz's career. He was still most of the time being beaten by Leclerc, who is the better driver. But because Carlos would occasionally beat Leclerc, like once every 5 races, people would suddenly go, "Oh, Carlos, he doesn't get the credit he deserves," and all this rubbish, which is just not true. So I will say I think he's a tad overrated by some people, but when he's at his best, he is a very good driver, but he just isn't. He isn't, again, on that elite level with Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell. He's not there. Wilf wants saying Gasly has been poor this season. I actually think he's been pretty decent. I think he's done mostly the best he can this year. That Alpine car is very all over the place. One weekend it's really quick, and then they go to a street circuit and they're nowhere. So it's been a pretty difficult car to drive. I think Gasly's doing absolutely fine in that car. Willifon says Hadjar, Albon, and Alonso are the best 3 drivers outside of the top 3 teams this season. Albon and Hadjar, definitely, I would agree on. Alonso, I'm not sure I would include Alonso in that. And it's not necessarily because of what Fernando has done, but I just think there's been more maybe impressive or better performances out there. I think Ocon, you could, deserves a shout given that he's in the top 10 of the championship. Yeah, I mean, if you include Alonso, that's fine, but yeah, I think someone like Esteban Ocon, I think, deserves a shout. Crystal Racing says that I can't help but believe Alonso is flattered by having Stroll as his teammate. It's brilliant to have Stroll as your teammate because Lance is making Fernando look like he's still as great as he was 20 years ago when he won the championship, when that isn't the case. Fernando is still obviously great, but he's not quite at that level like he was 20 years ago. I saw a stat where it was, what is it? Stroll has not outqualified Alonso for like over 20, is it 25 races or something? It is ridiculous how long that's gone on for. Nautius says that the pit lane is so short this track, I don't think a 1-stop is the way to go. If anything, we may see a number of drivers go for a 3-stopper. I think definitely if we get a mid-race safety car, I think we'll get a 3-stop race, maybe for some people. But I still think a 1-stop strategy is possible. Because remember, even though the tyres are wearing this weekend, that's mostly down to how soft the tyres are. The track itself doesn't actually tend to wear tyres out that much compared to other tracks. For example, the last track we went to, the Circuit de Catalunya, that wears tyres out way more than this track. This track really hurts the rear tyres. So, if you have good traction and you can keep the rear tyres in good condition, you can go quite a bit into a Grand Prix here. We've seen it before, even with soft compound tires. So I still think it's possible. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, that we're going to get teams doing a one-stop strategy, but I don't think it's impossible. I think what we will probably, the closest thing we will probably see to what do you call it? The closest thing we'll probably see to a one-stop strategy is a few teams going long in the first stint and then pitting still twice in the second half of the race. Um 2025 Pirellis are poor. Yeah, the C6 compound is absolutely rubbish. It's not even really that good for a qualifying lap, to be honest. And yeah, Rooks just putting there in the chat, pit stop time loss 18.5 seconds under a green flag, 9.5 under a safety car. The shortest pit lane loss of the season, which is why an extra pit stop is doable here. Right, let me try and see if I can find some other comments here quick. Todd asking, is the undercut strong here? Initially, probably, yeah, but I've seen races here before where drivers have gone a lot longer than others into the race and ended up benefiting from doing that. So it works both ways. I think one thing it does depend on a lot is traffic. Even though, yes, you can overtake here, DRS trains are something we do see here quite often. So, yeah, if you get stuck in a train or you're not able to overtake a slower car, if you've pitted earlier, then, yeah, it can really hurt your race. Because even though this track, it's not an actual street circuit, it is pretty much a street circuit in terms of how tight it is. And obviously, the only overtaking you can do or mostly you can do is down the straights rather than into these like corners in the first or middle part of the lap. So yeah, undercuts don't always work out here. Good to see Nib in the chat who says it's 3:18 a.m. Yeah, absolutely awful timing. Looney Classics, good to see you. Says Oscar will easily win today. With Carlos, Ferrari would not be second in the championship. I disagree. I think Ferrari would be. I don't think they would be massively different in terms of what their points total would be at the moment if they had Sainz in that car, but I think they would still be second. I think there's probably a couple races here and there where Sainz probably would have done better than Hamilton in terms of result, but mostly I think it would have been I think it would have been the same. But yeah, I disagree that Oscar is going to easily win. Even though, yes, I think McLaren in clear air will have the fastest car by maybe a tenth or two. I don't think Oscar is. Even if he does win today, it's not going to be an easy win. Absolutely no way will it be easy. But if he does win, it would be a massive win for his championship. Not just because, I mean, he's going to finish ahead of Lando Norris today, very likely to, unless Lando gets a very fortunate, safety car or virtual safety car to help him out. So, in terms of compared to his main championship rival, he's going to outscore Lando by a few points. But the reason, if Oscar was to win today, the reason that would be so crucial is not just because he would win, but he would stop Verstappen from winning a race that really Max, again, absolutely must win. So, yeah. If Oscar can do that, then that's a massive step towards a first World Championship. We've got, if you include this race today, we've got 5 races to go until the summer break. I think with Piastri, if he can win, at least 3 of these next 5 races, then he's still in a very good position. But I think Piastri really could win probably 4 of the next 5 races, given how quick the McLaren should be. As we're just seeing a load of the cars coming out onto the track. Obviously, the pit lane closes in a few minutes. That's why the cars are now coming out of the pit lane onto circuit. Paul James Scribb says, I've been listening all these years, but I was driving HGV, so not allowed to comment while driving. Understandable. But now I'm going back to teaching, so I can engage more with the chat. Happy Father's Day. Well, hopefully you had a decent time doing that. And yeah, good to see you in the chat again. Looney Classics also says, I think next year Lewis will be on par with Charles in terms of race pace. I think with a good car, he'll be very quick, and he has proven that last year when the car was quick and stable, he won. I disagree. I think Lewis is, as I've said before, past his prime. There will be the occasional race weekend where, yeah, he's on the pace of Leclerc or quicker. And maybe if the car's quick enough to win a race, he'll win maybe a race here or there. But most of the time, I think Leclerc beats Hamilton and is quicker than Hamilton because Lewis is just not as good anymore. And I don't think a better car in terms of handling is going to change that. It's the same car for both drivers, and Leclerc has done a lot better with that car this season than Hamilton has. So as we're looking at Lando Norris on his way to the grid, Norris desperately has to finish, well, at least in the top 4 today. But if he can get on the podium, that would be a good recovery for Norris in this race. Splinter Gear says, rubbish, you don't suddenly drop off that hard 1 year on from being such a good driver. He hasn't dropped suddenly 1 year on. This is 2 years in a row now. Because last year, yes, he won a couple races. That's great. But last year, he got absolutely smashed by Russell in qualifying. And clearly, Russell was quicker than Lewis Hamilton last year. There is not, and you cannot deny it. It is literally a fact. And yeah, Lewis last year, even though he won a couple races, he wasn't good enough. Given his standard, he was not good enough last year. And this season, he has not shown that he has improved at all compared to last year. In fact, you could argue he's worse than last year. So this is this is not the case of him suddenly from 1 year to the next becoming a bad driver. No, this is 2 years in a row now where he is quite a bit off the pace where he should be. And that's why last year I really held back in saying that he is, past his prime or whatever, because last year was the first year we've ever really seen from Hamilton where he was properly off the pace on a consistent basis. And I waited until this year and I remember saying that ad nauseum last year, that let's wait till 2025 to see whether Lewis truly is past his prime or whether it was just a bad season. And from what I've seen this season, he's past his prime. Clearly past his prime. Looney Classic saying Charles can be beaten to a championship by Lewis. Yesterday proved he is full of mistakes here and there. Yeah, only if Ferrari had by far the best car, but I mean that's never going to happen because Ferrari are incapable of building a car that is miles better than the rest. So, yeah. Let me see if I can find some a couple more comments. I will have a pause from reading comments in a moment to repost the stream link out, and also I will just do a quick roundup of the teams as to what the teams should be aiming for this race, and then I will do a quick reminder of my predictions for the race. Looney Classic says, with no safety cars, I'd be surprised if Oscar is not at least 15 seconds ahead of Max with 5 laps to go. Yeah. I think maybe you'll be right. McLaren were very dominant last Grand Prix in Spain, but I don't think McLaren are quite on that level of performance this weekend compared to what they were doing in Spain. But, we'll see. Blade rises. I think Oscar will have the pace over from Max and McLaren's race pace in recent races, but a clear step ahead of the rest. And I think Oscar will win through strategy or an incident ahead. Yeah, we'll see. I think Oscar, as I said, he can definitely win today. I think it's dependent though on when. I don't think it's dependent on strategy really, unless obviously McLaren mess things up. I think it's really dependent on when Oscar overtakes certain people. If he spends too long behind certain cars, I think that's what will cost him the win today. But we'll see ultimately what happens. I personally think he'll only just lose this race, but it will be very close, no doubt about it. Nib saying Lee Clark shambolic weekend. Absolutely. The crash in practice one, which I have to say was a really poor mistake, pushing that hard in practice one and damaging the car the way he did. That was very poor. Something that he would be harshly criticised for if he was a younger driver. That was something a rookie would do. What he did on Friday, which definitely hurt his weekend. And then obviously yesterday, poor mistake at the end of qualifying. But yeah, let me just post the stream link out again. And then we'll go on to the teams quickly, do a quick roundup of the teams. Let me just post this out. Come join us here to watch along the race in Montreal. So there you go. And also, make sure if you haven't already to vote in the poll running in the chat. There is another, 20 to 25 minutes left for that poll. So, yeah, Make sure to vote in it if you have not already to let me know who do you think, out of the 4 options I've given, who do you think wins the Canadian Grand Prix? Will it be Verstappen, Russell, Piastri, or Norris? But make sure to keep your comments coming, because I will come back to you guys in the chat pretty soon. But let's just go through the teams quick. So McLaren, obviously, the race win is what they should be aiming for every weekend. And again, I think this race, it comes down to, for Oscar Piastri, whether he can overtake certain cars quick enough and not get held up too much in the race today. Because I do think in clear air, the McLaren is the quickest car. But they need to be in clear air, obviously, long enough to be able to deliver what that deserves, which is the race win. If Verstappen does get past Russell early on, and Piastri is stuck behind Russell, then he must avoid being stuck behind Russell for a number of laps, because that could be the difference today between winning and finishing in second. And I think it ultimately will prove to be the difference in this race today. So, yeah, that is what I think, that is what is separating Oscar Piastri from possible victory. We've seen many times before he's been able to execute moves at the exact time he needs to, and he's been very clutch, I guess you could say, in delivering overtakes, and he'll have to be today if he's going to win this Canadian Grand Prix. For Lando Norris, if he can get onto the podium, great, but today is a damage limitation drive. He will do incredibly well to get anywhere near his championship rivals. For Max Verstappen, he must win today's race. Absolutely, that is the exactly what he needs today. Obviously, don't get a race ban. That is another thing that Verstappen does not need. That would be very costly for him and his world championship. But if Verstappen can win today without incident, that would be a big moment for his world championship, because Red Bull have not really looked this weekend that quick. They've not looked awfully slow or anything, but they've not looked like race win contenders. But with Max where he is on the grid and the pace he's got, it's time for him to deliver the result that is absolutely there to be taken. But it's all down to whether Max, similar to what we saw at Imola, whether Max can deliver in the crucial moments to get that race win. If he gets the race win today, it really could turn around his season and his championship. Remember, he's 49 points behind Piastri. Cannot afford to be beaten by Oscar today. Watch out for Tsunoda starting from 19th. Red Bull as well, watch out for them in general. They've got by far the best top speed of any team. Let's see if they can utilize that. Ferrari, even worse grid position today than I expected them to be. I did expect them to have a good qualifying, but it was even worse, really, than I expected. A podium is too far for them to be able to get, but I would like to see at least some decent pace today, to at least show that if Leclerc had done a good enough final lap in qualifying, that the potential was there, possibly, to have maybe a Ferrari on the podium. Let's see if that pace is there. It's going to be a struggle today for Ferrari, obviously mixing around in the pack, but let's hope it's a decent race for them. If they can finish in the top 5, given their grid position, I think that's good enough. But obviously, podium was something that was on offer to this weekend for Ferrari, but it was always going to come down to where they started on the grid. And yeah, the grid position, not good enough, especially with their best driver to be able to get that today, I'm afraid. For Mercedes, of course, pole position they have. Can they deliver their first win of the season? It's going to be very hard. Max Verstappen behind has a very quick car in a straight line. So Russell, if he does maintain the lead on the first lap, will have to sprint away in the early laps to keep himself ahead of Verstappen. For Antonelli, just needs to keep himself close enough to that top 3. So if anything does kick off, he can maybe take his first ever podium in Formula One. But for Russell, he can win today. I just think it's a tad, I wouldn't say unrealistic. I just think a tad too far for him to be able, a result for him to be able to get today, purely because of how quick the Red Bull is down the straights and how quick the McLaren is. And Mercedes, we have seen in the last few races, have dropped off at times with their race pace compared to what they've done in qualifying compared to the rest of the field. So yeah, it's going to be hard. But George Russell, after the qualifying lap we did yesterday, has shown us that anything is possible. Aston Martin should score some points today. Fernando Alonso has been absolutely brilliant this weekend. Alonso should be finishing in the top 8. Let's see if he can do that. Alpine have got a car in the top 10 somehow. Franco Colapinto starting in the top 10 for the first time this season. Hopefully he has a good race. He's having a good weekend. We'll see what he's able to do. If he was to grab a point, that would be an absolutely amazing result, given Alpine have not really been super quick this weekend. Haas, 13th and 14th. I'd be amazed if they ended up in the points, given they've been the slowest team this weekend. But yeah, their grid position, pretty good. A lot higher than it really should be. We'll see what they can do. Racing Bulls really should be finishing in the top 10 today. Isaac Hadjar qualified 9th. He'll start 12th because of the impeding penalty he was given, and rightfully so, for him impeding Carlos Sainz in qualifying. Watch out for Hadjar. Obviously, he's been brilliant this season. The car is quick, and as long as he doesn't make any mistakes or the team doesn't mess him up, he should be able to find his way back into the top 10 somehow by the end of the race. Williams were disappointing yesterday, but their race pace on Friday looked very good. Can they deliver that today? We'll see. Alex Albon is starting from P9. Watch out for Carlos Sainz starting 16th. We know he'll improve from there. And for Sauber, watch out for them. They're probably the dark horse in the midfield. Nico Hülkenberg in 11th. Sauber were very quick on the hard compound tyre on the Friday long run. So watch out for Hülkenberg and Sauber. And of course, Hülkenberg in the last Grand Prix finished 5th. And Sauber were pretty quick in the race as well in the midfield. So yeah, watch out for the green mean machine. But here is my final race prediction for this Canadian Grand Prix. Just about, I think Max Verstappen wins this race by about a second from Oscar Piastri. George Russell, I think, will be 3rd. Norris 4th. Antonelli 5th. Leclerc 6th. Hamilton 7th. Alonso 8th. Albon 9th. And Isaac Hadjar will just about grab P10 ahead of probably Hülkenberg, Sainz, and drivers like that. So that's my prediction. Make sure to let me know your prediction, guys, before we get into this race, as we've got just over 20 minutes to go until the race is underway. And when the next minute ticks, I will, or ticks over, I will get the timer back on screen. As Martin Brundle's just doing his grid walk at the moment. And he's interviewing someone from the Racing Bulls team. And it's, I think it's Alan Permain, who for years was with the Enstone team, which is obviously now Alpine, was obviously Lotus, Renault, Benetton. Yeah, he was with them for a long time, but they got rid of him a couple of years ago, and he's now lending his services to Racing Bulls, and that's probably why Racing Bulls have been in good shape with someone like him at their team. Hello to Brabham. Good to see you. Rook's just saying Gasly and Lawson required to start from the pit lane after cars modified under part farming conditions. Right, so Lawson will be 19th on the grid. Gasly 20th, and then that'll be Sonoda 18th. So, yeah. Yeah, Brabham saying I think the heat plays into Oscar's hands. It does definitely play into McLaren's hands. We've seen this season in hotter conditions, McLaren have been very strong in race conditions. So, it being as hot and sunny as it's going to be in Montreal this time of year, definitely does help. And it becoming a bit of a tyre race definitely plays towards McLaren's, plays in their favour. Will F1 saying, waiting to see my reaction to what? Hulkenberg was better than Russell in 2024. Yeah. Absolute bullshit is what that is. No way. I will never endorse such a comment. And yeah, Lawson was given a 50 place grid penalty for changing his engine under parc fermé conditions, which only sees him drop, one position in the order. So, yeah. Shows you how those grid penalties don't really mean much. Looney Classic saying the best engineers seem to be in the UK and Ferrari struggle to lure them to Maranello. Maybe it's not nice to live and work there. I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's any issues working there. I think the problem is Ferrari are not looking enough in that area. The UK, for example. I don't think they're looking enough in that area. I think they love having a very homegrown base of engineers and technical people, but ultimately that's the reason why Ferrari are one of the big reasons why Ferrari have not won anything for 17 years, because they've not been able to have the best personnel for long enough. They did have James Allison at their team for was it 3 years as designer. I would like to go back and research why James Allison left Ferrari. I think, was it a family issue? Let me have a quick look. Because when they hired him, I remember at the time I really thought, wow, Ferrari are, going to be going places. And he did design a good car in 2015. Yeah, he quit as technical director following the death of his wife. Yeah, I knew it was some sort of family related. And then, yeah, the following February, he joined Mercedes and was the technical director at Mercedes, pretty much. And yeah, I think he wanted to be closer to home because of the death of his wife, and plus he's got 3 kids, so it was a family reason. Which when that happens, there's nothing you can do. That's unlucky on Ferrari's behalf that whole situation happened. But if you look at who they have tried to replace him with, it just wasn't good enough. So yeah. And obviously Allison still with Mercedes. Nib saying that they're changing brake discs on the grid on Colapinto's car. Hopefully there's no big issues for him. That's one thing, which isn't as big of an issue these days as it used to be, but it is still an issue, is brakes get an absolute pounding at this track. If you go watch F1 races from here in the 90s, the amount of retirements in the race from brake problems and brake failures was quite astounding. Yeah, you'd have a number, 6 or 7 cars per Canadian Grand Prix back in the 90s that would retire with brake problems. Obviously, engine problems as well because of the long straights. It really used to be a car killer, this circuit, back in the day before the cars became reliable. But even if, if you go look at I think, was it the cars started to become reliable in like 2003, but even if you go and look at like the 2005 Canadian Grand Prix, I want to say, we only had a few cars finish that race. Yeah, 11 cars finished that race, and 2 of those cars were 3 laps down. Yeah, suspension, brakes, engine. So yeah, this track really used to hurt the cars a lot, but not so much these days, because obviously the cars are built better, stronger, more reliable. So that is not an issue as much these days. But if it was, let's say we had the same reliability rate now that we had 30 years ago, if you were Leclerc in 8th, Leclerc could have a legit chance at finishing 2nd or 3rd purely from just staying reliable, because of just how this track would abuse the cars, really. But now you actually have to, and that's why I prefer the era we're in now in terms of it being a lot more reliable, because now to finish in certain positions you actually have to work for it. You can't just rely on 2 or 3 cars ahead of you breaking down, because if you go and look back in the 80s and the 90s, there were plenty of times where people won races without doing anything. Purely the car ahead would break down and they would go off into the lead and win. So yeah, I prefer the way it is these days, even though you don't get those surprise results anymore that you would get with having loads of DNFs. Like, we've had plenty of surprise results here in Canada before, back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, from having loads of DNFs. Again, at least this time people actually have to work for it. As Karun on the SkyPad is just showing us some quick highlights of where you can overtake at this track, and there are thankfully plenty of places you can overtake. By the way, cheers to Rooks for getting rid of all these bots posting links in the chat. I don't know why there really are so many of them today. Way more than it used to be, and there is again another one. But yeah, we've got 11 minutes to go. Let me find a couple more comments before we finish the poll in the chat and we get to this race. G Walker saying, howdy, Chazza Rooks. Hoping for great start with Russell holding him down. Good to see you. Let me see if I can find a couple other ones that I've missed. And hold on. Looney Classics earlier. There you go. Saying sports like F1 are so niche and expensive, they will never be as big as football or basketball. And then Nib responding that Formula 1 is no longer a niche sport after DTS, which, yeah, I would have to agree with. Formula 1, before Liberty Media took it over, was absolutely a niche sport, but because of the whole Netflix stuff, and now you've got this F1 film coming out this month, which I might go and see. I don't know if I'm going to go see it, to be honest. I'm not super keen. I just hope I just hope the film's good. Even though I'm sure there'll be a couple cringeworthy, moments in it. But yeah, let me just see when it comes out. June the 25th is when the F1 movie comes out, which is next Wednesday. No, not this Wednesday. Next Wednesday, the Wednesday after. So it'd be 3 days before qualifying day in Austria, and then it comes out in the United States on the June the 27th, which is the day before the Austrian Grand Prix. It's 2.5-hour film, which is a long one. Yeah, I might go and see it. We'll see. See if I've got the time. Yanni says Lewis is lucky that Lauda convinced him to join Mercedes. His career would look very different. Absolutely. If Lewis was, if he was loyal to McLaren, there is a very high chance Lewis would still only have one world championship to his name. And that, it's not a good thing. Let's be honest. That, a driver of Lewis Hamilton's talent was so close to having only one world championship to his name if he had made the decision that F1 at the time said he should have made, which was to stay with McLaren. So, yeah. But yeah, who knows how Lewis's career would have gone if he had stayed with McLaren. If he had signed, say, a new 5-year deal, then he would have been with McLaren until what? End of 2017, would it have been? And by then, maybe he could have had the chance to go to Mercedes. But maybe not. Maybe someone else would have gone to Mercedes. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Alonso. Maybe Verstappen. You just don't know what would have happened if Hamilton had decided to stay. Quick breakdown of who has the most new tyres for people who just joined. Yeah. So Piastri, the two McLarens have 2 new sets of hard tyres and 1 new set of mediums for this race. Same for Ferrari. Max does not have any new set of medium tyres. He only has 1 new set of hard tyres. Same for Russell and Antonelli. So strategically, it's going to be an interesting one as to who is on what compound, I think, going forward from the first pit stop on, and who decides to go how long on whatever tyre. Anyway, let me finish up this poll in the chat where there has been a clear winner. And let me just wait for the poll results to appear, and then we'll quickly go through them. As there's been, I think, 400 votes in this poll. And maybe it has appeared for you guys in the chat, but for me, it has not just yet. And absolutely, as Yanni says, the little choices and decisions in our lives can change so much. It can. And for Hamilton, luckily, it was the best decision he ever made in his life. But, yeah, the poll, there you go, finally appears. And I asked you guys who will win the Canadian Grand Prix. 400 votes, and 44% of you voted for Max Verstappen. 25% for Piastri, 18% for Russell, and 10% for Lando Norris. But guys, it's now time to get into a final couple bits of information before the start of this Canadian Grand Prix. Let's start with the championship standings. Oscar Piastri goes into this race as the leader, 10 points clear of Lando Norris, and 49 points behind in third is Max Verstappen, and that's why he must win today's Grand Prix. George Russell fourth. Maybe if he wins today, depending on what happens on to Piastri, maybe he could put himself in the championship conversation, but I still think he's firmly out of it. Charles Leclerc 5th, Hamilton 6th, Antonelli 7th, Albon 8th, Isaac Hadjar 9th, and Esteban Ocon in P10. And then on the constructor side, McLaren nearly 200 points clear. They're going to win the Constructors' Championship. There's no doubt about that. Ferrari climbed up to second after the last Grand Prix. Can they hang on to that? It's going to be difficult today. Mercedes third, only 6 points behind. Red Bull fourth, 21 points behind. Ferrari in second. Williams in fifth. Racing Bulls after the last Grand Prix, now into sixth. Haas in seventh. Sauber up to eighth after the last Grand Prix with Aston Martin in ninth. And Alpine last of all. But let's get into some key stats regarding the front-running teams going into this Grand Prix that you guys need to know. McLaren, their last win in Canada was in 2012 with Lewis Hamilton, 13 years ago. And McLaren have taken 4 wins in Canada since the turn of the century. Lewis Hamilton has taken 3 of those. And McLaren last year was so close to victory, 2nd and 5th they were. Will it be the same today, or can they go a step better and take the all-important win in Montreal? Red Bull have dominated the Canadian Grand Prix as of recent. Max Verstappen won here last year, and they have won 3 times, obviously in the last 10 years. And those 3 wins have been the last 3 Canadian Grand Prix. Can he make it 4 in a row in Montreal? And yeah, last year, first and a DNF it was for Red Bull. Obviously, Sergio Perez retired with, I think, a broken rear wing last year. Ferrari had a disastrous Grand Prix here last year. The last win in Canada was 7 years ago with Sebastian Vettel. That's their only win in Montreal in the last 10 years. And actually, before that 2018 win, you would have to go back to 2004 for the last time Ferrari won in Montreal, which, of course, was with Michael Schumacher. So only 2 wins here in Montreal in the last 21 years. And yeah, last year, Ferrari didn't finish the race. Both cars retired. One, Leclerc had an engine issue, and Sainz obviously crashed with Alex Albon. And for Mercedes, their last win in Canada 6 years ago with Lewis Hamilton. They've taken 4 victories here in the last 10 years. Last year it was 3rd and 4th. They really thought they should have won last year. Can they do it today? But let's get into your official starting grid for the Canadian Grand Prix. On the front row we all wanted George Russell and Max Verstappen. The second row, Oscar Piastri, the championship leader, and Kimi Antonelli. The third row, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. That was actually, these two were on the same row of the grid when Lewis took his first ever F1 win. Of course, they were on the front row that time in 2007. On the fourth row, Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. And completing the top 10, ex-teammates at Williams from last year, Alex Albon and Franco Colapinto starting in the top 10 for the first time this year. Just outside of the top 10, Hülkenberg and Hadjar, who both finished in the points in the last Grand Prix. Then the 2 Haases, 13th and 14th. 15th and 16th, Bortoleto and Sainz. Then it's Stroll 17th, and now it's Yuki Tsunoda in 18th. And then it will be Liam Lawson and Pierre Gasly, 19th and 20th, both starting from the pit lane. So there you go. That is your starting grid. I put the tyres there for the moment, but I don't actually know who is on what compound. Rook's saying that Russell, Verstappen, Piastri, Antonelli, Hamilton, Alonso, Albon, Colapinto, Hülkenberg, Hadjar, Behrman on mediums. Everyone else on hard tyres. So Norris and Leclerc are on the hard compound tyre. I did say that I thought Ferrari would split strategy. I did not think McLaren would, though. So that is very interesting that that McLaren have decided to do that. But let's see, it may pay off big time as the formation lap gets underway now. Let me just update all the tyre info for you guys. Remember, the hard tyre is a C4 compound, which at most Grand Prix would be the softest compound that Pirelli would bring. So it's a good tyre. It's a lot better than the hard tyre we saw in the Spanish Grand Prix, which was the C1 compound, which had a lot of durability, but absolutely no grip or pace in it. As on this formation lap, Russell already coming up to the midpoint of, or just after the midpoint of the lap, weaving the tyres. Obviously, this is going to be one of the shorter formation laps of the year, one of the shortest laps of the year here in Montreal. As the front 5 cars just coming through the hairpin. As Max Verstappen weaving the tyres as he comes down the back straight. Watch out for that Red Bull down the back straight. They have been doing the best top speeds all weekend. Clearly, that is a strategy that Red Bull have been going with the top speed, as Stroll and Tsunoda are only just coming out of, or coming up to now, the hairpin. As they will be Stroll and Tsunoda, the last 2 cars on the grid, and then Lawson and Gasly will be the 2 cars in the pit lane. Just over 350,000 weekend attendance at the Canadian Grand Prix. As Verstappen on the grid is pointing his car towards George Russell. Remember, the pole position here in Canada has the inside line, which is not always, well, it's not really necessarily the grippiest part of the grid. So that is not necessarily, even though that is where pole position is, it's not necessarily the best place to start from on the grid in terms of where the most amount of grip on the grid is. As here comes Stroll and Tsunoda at the back. So who will win this Canadian Grand Prix? Will it be Mercedes, Red Bull, or McLaren? The lights are on. It's 3, 4, 5 lights. And it's go in Canada, and George Russell gets a brilliant start and pulls ahead of Verstappen as Antonelli round the outside of Piastri. Has he got the move done? Piastri is going to use the momentum to go right round the outside, is he? He's going to try, but Antonelli has the inside. Can he hold it? He does. Crucial move for Mercedes, and that is a crucial move in a bad way for Piastri. He's now got extra traffic in his way as the cars all come through turn 6 and 7, as Colapinto there has got ahead of Alex Albon, who's now trying to re-overtake up to turn 7, and Albon goes off the track and bumps very hard as he comes back on. He gets overtaken by about 3 or 4 cars. Thankfully, did not come back on right in the path of everybody else as they cut to the hairpin, and Hulkenberg has now gone up to 9th place, and cars absolutely everywhere. And yet it's Hulkenberg 9th, Colapinto 10th, Hadjar is 11th as Russell leads from Verstappen, Antonelli, Piastri, and then Hamilton, Alonso, Norris, Leclerc, and then it's Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Hadjar, Albon, and then Behrman and Ocon as we begin lap 2, and DRS will be enabled already from lap 2 on. And let's see if Russell can pull away from Verstappen. And remember, that Red Bull has a massive speed advantage over the Mercedes as Tsunoda has overtaken Stroll, so Tsunoda up to 17th. F1 below Behrman, by the way, is on the hard compound tyre, as Russell has not been able to pull over a second's lead And Verstappen keeping it about 8/10 behind, as Oscar Piastri in 4th, just over a second behind Antonelli, not having a great start here, not exactly pressurizing the Mercedes as they come down the back straight. And Antonelli has actually got DRS on Verstappen. Verstappen has dropped over a second behind Russell, but he's now gaining that time back down the straight, and he's took a big amount out of Russell down the back straight. And as the DRS again, as they come over the start-finish line, and the gap goes from 1.1 to about 0.6 of a second. As Alex Albon, I'm sure, has already, we'll probably see the message in a moment, but he probably already has complained on the radio that he deserved more space on that first lap, but I don't think he had really enough space to actually get the overtake done. He should not have gone for that move. But Max Verstappen really starting to get close to Russell now, really starting to pressurize. As Piastri continuing to drop behind Antonelli. He was about 1.1 behind. It's now 1.5 seconds. So Piastri really struggling in these opening couple laps. As we're on board with Verstappen, gaining a lot down the back straight, and he's only half a second behind Russell as they come through the final chicane, and they're about to begin lap 4. And yeah, we're seeing exactly what I said was going to happen, where if Max has DRS behind Russell, he's going to gain a lot of time down the straights, and Max is just going to keep getting closer and closer, and eventually Verstappen is going to get this move done because that Red Bull is so quick down the straights this weekend. Just needs to keep Russell in, not too far ahead of him, and then eventually he'll be able to execute the move, probably in these next few laps. And with Piastri in 4th, really Max does need to get this move done in these next few laps so that he can pull a bit of a gap. As Antonelli being caught a bit more by Piastri now. And Antonelli really starting to drop behind now. Antonelli in 3rd, 2.5 seconds off the pace, or not off the pace, but behind his teammate, who is still keeping far enough ahead of Verstappen that he doesn't have to go off the racing line to defend, but eventually that is going to happen. As they come out of the final chicane and begin lap 5. And Verstappen harrying the Mercedes and getting incredibly close through the first couple corners. As Piastri in 4th, by the way, is 4 seconds already off the lead, nearly 4.5 seconds off the lead. As Max does a fastest lap of 1:15.9. And they tell Oscar on the radio we are doing Plan B target lap. Is that a possible 1-stop strategy, or even maybe still a 2-stop, but maybe going a bit longer on the first stint? We'll see, but he can't afford to keep dropping behind like he is, because he'll be putting himself out of play. By the way, Charles Leclerc, I don't know if he's made a mistake, but he is 2.5 seconds behind Norris, who is only 1 car ahead of him. And Leclerc about 5 seconds behind his teammate. So Leclerc struggling, and he's only barely over a second ahead of Hülkenberg as Verstappen closes again. He just needs to get out of the hairpin. He just needs to get a 2-3 tenths closer to Russell if he can. And then he can start to force Russell to defend. But Russell doing a great job to keep himself far enough ahead, coming out of that hairpin, that Verstappen can't have a go. And this is brilliant stuff between, you could say, not in this order, but probably the 2 best drivers in Formula 1 right now, Max Verstappen and George Russell, having a brilliant battle here. as Oscar Piastri nearly 2 seconds behind Antonelli. McLaren, well, I won't say McLaren, but McLaren fans and Piastri fans out there better hope that he is backing off to save tyres, because his pace right now is very poor. But Russell, as he pulled over a second ahead of Verstappen, he has, and Max this time around does not have the DRS. That's crucial. Can Russell now pull away from Max? Because if he can, then that is Max's main weapon of attack took away. As we're on lap 7, Russell 1.1 clear of Verstappen. Antonelli only a couple seconds behind Verstappen. Antonelli keeping them honest up front and doing a good job is Antonelli. Remember, Antonelli's not had a podium yet in Formula 1. And he's searching for that today. And here's a replay of the start. Antonelli had a good start right round the outside of Piastri. Piastri tried to use the momentum to go around the outside, but he just didn't have enough grip around the outside. And then Antonelli, good move up the inside, stamped his authority, and got third. Here's a replay on board from Verstappen. And yeah, Russell, absolutely brilliant start. Max didn't have a chance into turn 1. Yeah, Antonelli, great job to pass the World Championship leader. Remember, Antonelli has not scored a point since the Miami Grand Prix, which was, 4 races ago. And yeah, here's a replay of Albon and Colapinto, and yeah, Albon should not have tried to go for that move. He was never going to make that overtake stick. That was way too aggressive. And has probably damaged the underneath of his car, bumping over the runoff to get back on. Here's a onboard from Hulkenberg, who took advantage of that and is now in 9th place. That is just expert driving from Hulkenberg. So experienced, knew exactly what to do, and he scythed his way past. But here's Russell, and yeah, still over a second clear of Verstappen, 1.2 seconds. Antonelli is actually closing the gap to Verstappen. The gap was 2 seconds between Verstappen and Antonelli. It's now 1.5 seconds, and Max is dropping back into the clutches of Antonelli. One impressive performance out there. Alonso is within a second of Lewis Hamilton, and Lando Norris in 7th, a couple seconds behind. So the hard tyre is not working right now, because Leclerc in 8th is only a couple seconds or so ahead of Hulkenberg in the Sauber. So the hard tyre definitely not working as we're on lap 9. Russell now 1.5 seconds clear of Verstappen. Lando Norris, by the way, on the hard tyre is the highest placed runner on the hard tyre. He is he's nearly 10 seconds, about 9 to 10 seconds off the lead. So Norris is losing 1 second a lap to the leader. So yeah, that hard tyre clearly not working. And Leclerc in 8th is losing, I think, about 1.2 seconds a lap to the leader. So far, working out brilliantly for Mercedes, as Piastri saying on the radio, front degradation is better than FP2, rear degradation is worse. Piastri still about 2 seconds behind Antonelli, as Antonelli now 1.2 seconds behind Verstappen. So continuing to close in. Mercedes looking very good right now. They've definitely got the quickest car in this race at the moment. As we're on lap 10. Yeah, they've got the quickest car right now, Mercedes. And Verstappen, in a moment, is going to have to get defensive against Antonelli, who will be very keen to overtake Verstappen, because Mercedes not only Are they searching for their first win? But at the moment, they look like they could maybe grab a 1-2. But remember, we're only 10 laps into this race. We're not even 25% through this Grand Prix. Long way to go. And as I know from watching many Canadian Grand Prix in the past, a lot can happen still. But we're looking here on board with Piastri, who I think is closing on Antonelli and Verstappen ahead, but it's not by a lot. But Piastri, we are looking at the visor cam for him as he's coming down the back straight. And Leclerc saying on the radio, these tyres are not great. And yeah, that is obvious to see that the tyres are not great. Leclerc is miles off the pace. Here's Lando Norris looking a lot quicker now as Fernando Alonso has suddenly dropped off the pace. He was right behind Hamilton. He's now nearly 3 seconds behind Hamilton. So I think Alonso might be now starting to suffer quite a lot with tyre degradation as Lando Norris is now looking to get past Fernando as Russell out front, about 2 seconds clear of Verstappen as Antonelli is now 0.8 behind and will have the DRS. As Max asked how the tyres, and he says, not good, very fragile. Well, his tyres are not going to be helped by the setup that he is on, which is obviously he's got less wing on his Red Bull to make him quick down the straights. So that is going to hurt as Alonso slow out of the hairpin, and I think Alonso is just going to let Norris go here because that McLaren is infinitely quicker. And Lando Norris up to 6th, and he's got about 3 seconds now to catch up to fellow Brit Lewis Hamilton. Is Antonelli now only half a second behind Verstappen? We need to be looking at that battle now, please, Mr. Director. Because Antonelli is right on the cusp of possibly making an overtake, but we're now going to see a replay of that move from Lando. And yeah, Alonso didn't really go wide. He just took a wider line, but the McLaren just has way more grip, especially at slower speed. And that's why the move was completed. Now, let's get to this Antonelli and Verstappen stuff. Here we go, up to the hairpin. Antonelli only half a second behind. Can he get a better run through the hairpin to get a run on Verstappen as they're telling Albon he's got an issue with his power unit? Here comes Antonelli. Verstappen going to have to defend. And he doesn't. Verstappen, is he letting Antonelli go? No, he's going into the pit lane. So Verstappen pits, and I think that is the right decision because Max was really starting to slow up. And Max, will he go onto a set of hard tyres? Yes, he will, which I think is the right decision. Verstappen, though, where will he come out? Will it be ahead of Colapinto? Yes, it will. Just about. So Verstappen will come out in 9th place. As we got the two Haas's side by side, and it's Ocon passing Behrman. I don't know if Behrman has let Ocon through there on purpose or not, but Ocon is through. Ocon is on the hard tyres. So the hard tyres are now starting to work. So let me just update who's on what compound, as this is Ocon passing Hadjar. So Ocon overtaking 2 cars. Again, the hard tyre absolutely is working now. As George Russell pits for Mercedes. As we've got another car side by side. It's Sainz and Bortoletto. And I think Sainz may have got that move done. But anyway, Russell comes in. And it's a 2.5 second pit stop, which is all good. So Russell will come out Will he come out ahead of Hulkenberg? If he does, that'll be crucial for his race, and he does. So he's got a car in between him and Verstappen. That is massive for Russell. So Russell 7th as Ocon. Isaac Hadjar has just pitted. So Hadjar now last. Hadjar was on the medium, so he'll now go onto a set of hard tyres. And we're now on board with Lando Norris, who is now just over a second behind Lewis Hamilton as the hard tyres really kicking into gear now and really working. As Lando being told on the radio, we need one of those amazing races from you. He's not been doing a lot of those lately. But we'll see what he can do today as Antonelli now pits. So Antonelli's gone a couple laps longer than Verstappen. As long as Antonelli comes out ahead of Colapinto, who is the car behind Verstappen, then this will be fine. As Antonelli goes on to... That looks like a set of medium tyres. As Colapinto pits as well. So yeah, Antonelli will come out behind Max Verstappen, who's still stuck behind Hulkenberg. So that works out well for Antonelli. And Antonelli has only lost a couple seconds. 2.5 seconds through that. So Piastri now leads. Antonelli is now in 9th place as Colapinto has dropped to 19th. I know the tyre information is incorrect, by the way, at the moment. I will correct it when I can. But we're on lap 15. Piastri is in the lead. Lewis Hamilton at the moment is second, but I don't think for long. As here comes Lando Norris, who overtakes with DRS, and Lewis Hamilton's been told to box, and he does. So it's now a McLaren 1-2. So McLaren clearly are going to go longer into this race. That is how they are going to try and come back at Mercedes and Red Bull. As Hamilton pits, as so does Alonso. And both will go onto the hard tyre. Obviously, Ferrari have got a couple new sets. One of them just went on. As Hamilton, he's going to come up behind the Haas there. He's going to have a slight bit of traffic. Thankfully, though, didn't come up behind all those other cars, which would have been a disaster. But Alonso is now 18th. So... And Alonso obviously on the hard tyre. And Lewis Hamilton is 10th. Verstappen has just overtaken Hulkenberg. So Verstappen is up to 5th. And here's a replay of Verstappen getting that move done. But yeah, Piastri's in the lead on the medium. And then you've got Norris and Leclerc, who started on the hard tyre, still out there. As here comes Oscar Piastri on lap now 17. So he's gone, compared to Verstappen, he's gone about, 4 laps longer? Will that pay off for him? We'll have to see, as he's going to come out only, I think, a couple seconds behind Antonelli, who is stuck still behind Hulkenberg. So that's, compared to where he was in regards to Antonelli, that's worked out well, because he's only a couple seconds back on 2-lap fresher tyres. So Piastri in P7. As Antonelli, in a moment, will overtake Hulkenberg. And he does it now up the inside into turn 8. So Antonelli up to 5th. Antonelli has wasted, though, a lot of time. He's now 4.5 seconds behind Verstappen. So he's going to have to get his head down and get back after the world champion. But, yeah, Hulkenberg now 6th. And then Let me just update the other tyres in terms of who's on what. Albon is on the medium. Ocon is on the hard. Hamilton's on the hard. Behrman on the medium. And then you've got Bortoletto and Sainz on the hard tyre as well. Interestingly, Lewis Hamilton has not made progress from 10th so far, as is a replay of Tsunoda passing Bortoletto. So Sainz, I presume, has passed Bortoletto as well. And yes, Tsunoda using that really good top speed to get past. So Tsunoda making some good progress in this race. So lap 18, Lando Norris leading. Lando has not pitted yet. Lando is currently 6 seconds ahead of George Russell. So I reckon Lando could probably go until about lap 24 before he pits without losing the lead. And if I'm McLaren, I'm running him as long into the race as I can before Russell, gets up to the back of him. As Piastri there, overtaking Hülkenberg for 6th. So yeah, they need to run Norris another probably 5 laps. And if they can do that, that will really help Lando's race because he'll be on much fresher tyres for the rest of the race. So, Piastri up to 6th. His fastest lap has been done by Oscar Piastri at 1:15.5 as Oliver Behrman has just pitted. So, Behrman will come out last of all. Interesting that Albon is in 8th and is staying out there. We do know Albon likes to go longer with his first stint than others, but he's still on the medium, which is not performing very well. As Lewis Hamilton here, stuck behind the Haas of Ocon. And this is absolutely destroying Lewis Hamilton's race. Stuck in the midfield pack. He will get the move done eventually, but this is costing him, 2 or 3 seconds a lap compared to probably Russell and Verstappen. And this will actually help Fernando Alonso a bit, who's only, I think, 2 or 3 seconds behind. As Ocon there overtakes Alex Albon. Ocon having a brilliant race. We've seen this season, Haas do tend to be pretty quick on race day, and they are currently 8th as Hülkenberg pits. Hamilton passes Albon, so Hamilton is up to 9th. Or actually, up to 8th, because, Hülkenberg has pitted. Hülkenberg will come out in, I think, 17th place. So everyone except Alex Albon, who has just let his teammate through, everyone except Alex Albon is on the hard compound tyre. So let me just update that. As we've still got 50 laps to go. And at least one more pit stop in this hot and strenuous race. As Albon really should just pit because he's just going to lose loads of time. As Albon's saying on the radio, I don't really know why you don't listen to me. It really annoys me. As Hamilton there, overtaking Ocon into the final chicane. Hamilton now up to 7th, but he's lost a lot of time. Probably 5-6 seconds in the traffic there. And on lap 21, Lewis Hamilton 7th, but he will not be making any progress on that position probably today unless we get a safety car that helps him out because, he's lost a lot of time in those last few laps. As Albon's still on the radio talking to his team. Don't know what he's saying at the moment, but he's still in P10. He's actually helping his teammate out quite a bit because Sainz is building a bit of a gap to him. Lewis Hamilton now 10 seconds behind Piastri when before the pit stop, I think Hamilton was only 3 or 4 seconds behind at worst. So that shows you just how much time Lewis lost in the traffic. Might have been worth keeping Hamilton out an extra couple laps to avoid that traffic in hindsight, but that's the way it's gone, and it's not helped Hamilton at all, who's lost, is now half a pit stop behind Piastri. And if Charles Leclerc was to pit now, Leclerc would come out ahead of his teammate when Leclerc, before the pit stop of Hamilton, was behind. Leclerc is currently 22 seconds ahead of Hamilton, so Leclerc would come out comfortably ahead. And talking of Leclerc, he's only 1.8 seconds ahead of Russell, so we might be getting a pit stop at Ferrari in the next couple laps. Probably should be pitting in the next couple laps, because I think Leclerc's going to start losing a lot of time to the people that have already pitted if he stays out any longer. As that is Tsunoda passing Albon. So Tsunoda, who hasn't pitted yet, now in 10th place. And yeah, they've got to pit Albon at this point. He is incredibly slow. He's losing, I think, like 3 seconds a lap to the leaders. They've got to get him off that tyre. As Bortoleto now passes him, and no, Albon does not pit. So maybe they're committed to a one-stop race, which is suicide at this point because he's lost so much time being out there on that tyre. As we're looking at Alonso, who's just passed Albon as well. As soon as I update that Alonso, or that Albon's lost a position, he then goes and loses another one. There's Alonso 12th, Albon 13th, and then you've got Stroll, Lawson, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Hadjar, Behrman. And yeah, Albon has got to pit. As we are on lap 24 now, Lando Norris still doing a great job, and I said he should probably go until about lap 24 before he pits. I reckon he could probably extend this stint now because he is about 4.5 seconds ahead of Russell. So could probably go another maybe 5 laps before he pits. As here comes Stroll past Albon. And Albon finally pits. And will rejoin at the back on the hard compound tyre. Not sure staying out that long was worth it. But Russell does need to get on with it now in terms of overtaking Leclerc, as Ferrari just told Leclerc plan B, and Leclerc responded, I think plan C, which must be a one-stop strategy. If they do that, though, with Leclerc, I'm not sure it's going to work. So I would not go for that strategy if I was Ferrari, because if they're going to do a one-stop strategy, they'll need to go at least another 10 laps. They're going to lose way too much time doing that. They're going to then get overtaken by Russell, by Verstappen, probably Antonelli. And I mean, they're already 3 seconds behind Norris. So yeah, that is the wrong decision if that's what they're going to do there. Lando Norris, though, because of Lando's pace, I think he definitely might be able to do a one-stop strategy, but that's because he's been a lot quicker. As Lance Stroll was just pitted for the first time. So Stroll now I think will come out in 19th place ahead of Albon. As Lando stays out, Leclerc actually gaining time on Lando. It's now 2.5 seconds, the gap. As here comes George Russell. And like I said, Russell, if he wants to make sure that he doesn't have to worry about Norris and Leclerc going longer and maybe even doing a one-stop strategy and coming back at him that way, he needs to get on with it now, and he's got to overtake Leclerc really in this next lap or two. As he is getting closer up to turn 8. And definitely closes in through that little chicane as they come up to the hairpin now of turn 10. And I think Russell is going to be able to have a go as they exit the hairpin, and he gets a brilliant exit. Leclerc's not going to be able to defend this as Russell's just on the fastest lap of 1:15.5. And yeah, George Russell passes Charles Leclerc, and Ferrari, well, they're keeping Leclerc out, but I think they've got to get him in, because I think if they go any longer, I think they're going to hurt Leclerc's chances at fighting for a podium. Because let's say Leclerc is on a one-stop strategy. Remember, that means that if Russell and Verstappen are on a two-stopper, which they are, then Leclerc, Russell, and Verstappen all have to stop only once more. So if Leclerc is overtaken by Russell and Verstappen, then that guarantees that Leclerc will not finish on the podium. Which is surely what they're aiming for, a podium, as Russell does another fastest lap of 1:15.2. So they've got to get him in the pits, as far as I'm concerned, at the end of this lap. Lando Norris, I'm pretty sure Lando is on a two-stop. He's just doing a very long first stint. But Lando, probably himself, should be coming in the next couple laps as well, because I think it's got a bit too long in the tooth now, this first stint. But no, Leclerc stays out. Max himself now needs to try and get past this Ferrari. He's not going to do it into turn 1 this time around on lap 28. As, let me just update that Alonso has overtaken Bortoleto. And Alonso about to overtake Tsunoda probably in the next lap or so. As Alonso coming down to the chicane, Tsunoda defending his position. Obviously, Tsunoda started 18th and desperate for a point. As Verstappen still desperately trying to get past the Ferrari here, as Alonso all over the back of Tsunoda coming out the first couple corners. And Max did not really get a good enough exit from the hairpin on that occasion. And yeah, they're now telling Leclerc to box, and that is the right decision. Hopefully they are not on a one-stop strategy. As they go on to lap 29 now. So Leclerc will come out ahead of his teammate, so he has jumped a position compared to where he was before all the pit stops. Will he go on to another set of hard tyres? Yes, so he has officially, as Leclerc saying, I don't understand this choice. What is it? Leclerc has officially committed to a two-stop strategy as Alonso passes Tsunoda for 10th. Leclerc might not understand it, but what Ferrari have done there is the right decision. Because if he had done another 7 or 8 laps, he would have lost position to Max. He would have dropped a few seconds behind, and he wouldn't have put himself in a good position to make the one-stop work in terms of getting a podium. That's why Ferrari pitted him then, which was the right decision, because it gives them a better chance of finishing on the podium, pitting then, and committing now to a 2-stop race. But now, on much fresher tyres, Leclerc needs to get on with it as Lando Norris now decides to pit. And surely he will go on to another set of hard tyres as well. As on lap 30, Russell is back in the lead. Let's see what Norris goes on to. No, it's a set of mediums. So they're going to push hard in this stint. And Norris comes out in 5th on the medium, and he is about 7 or just under 7 seconds behind his teammate, who is in 4th place and is still 2.5 seconds behind Antonelli. So let's see what Lando Norris can do as Piastri now suddenly does a purple first sector. Lando is going to have to push hard. As we're looking here at Pierre Gasly in 14th, who has not pitted yet. As Leclerc asking, why have we boxed? Why did we box? And Leclerc, or the response is, we're on plan B. Leclerc saying, yeah, but I was just telling you the tyres were fine. Again, though, Leclerc's wrong. Yes, the tyres might have felt fine, but in terms of position and lap time, it was not. It was plan C, which was a one-stop strategy, was no longer going to work. So that's why they rightly put him on plan B. So Leclerc, yeah, maybe he really wanted that one-stop strategy, but ultimately even if the tyres feel fine, you've got to have the pace and the track position to make it work, and Leclerc no longer had that. So the right decision was made. Now Leclerc just needs to get on with it, push hard, because a podium is absolutely possible, but the first thing Leclerc needs to do is close up the Lando Norris ahead of him, because as long as he's behind Norris, he will not finish on the podium today. Alonso told to be gentle in turn 3, and Alonso's response is, we are racing, not testing. Fucking love Fernando. As feisty and aggressive at almost 44 years old as he was 20 years ago. And he's about to overtake Carlos Sainz probably in the next lap or so. As Alonso is just trying to make his way back through the pack. All Alonso needs to do is get up to 8th place. And then probably pull away for a few laps from Ocon and the rest. And then Alonso should have secured 8th place at that point. As we're looking at Gasly here, trying to pass Lawson for 13th. As there's quite a queue behind of you've got Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Hadjar, Behrman, Stroll and Albon. All those cars though, well no, not Stroll and Albon, they're quite far behind, but Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Hadjar, Behrman, those cars have pitted. Gasly and Lawson still are on the tyres they started on. As out front, by the way, George Russell still leading by about 3 seconds from Max Verstappen, so comfortable at the moment out front. Antonelli in 3rd is starting to close back in on Max Verstappen. The gap was for a while like 5 seconds or 6 seconds. The gap now down to 4 seconds. Oscar Piastri 2.2, 2.1 behind Antonelli. So pretty much everyone from Antonelli to Leclerc is catching Verstappen, who is 2nd. So Verstappen, not yet, but soon, Max is going to have to make an earlier pit stop compared to his rivals. Because eventually Antonelli, and yeah, Antonelli's got the gap down to 3.5 seconds now, so he's really starting to catch. So, yeah, Max probably might have to pit in the next 5 laps or so if Antonelli really starts to catch him quickly. And that would be an early second stop for Max, which he doesn't really want to do. Because remember, Max does not have, I think, as many hard tyres available as the others. I think, actually, I'm not sure Max has another set of hard tyres available. So when he pits, he'll have to go on to another set of mediums. And you don't want to be pitting too early onto the mediums, which have shown after 20 laps or so to be an awful tyre. As Alonso passes Sainz, as we're looking at Gasly here defending from Hulkenberg into the final chicane. Alonso's next target is good friend Esteban Ocon. For Ocon, though, who hasn't pitted yet, might want to pit in the next couple laps, because if he wants to beat Alonso, then really he needs to pit in the next couple laps to avoid Alonso overtaking and then pulling a gap. Or Haas have already given up on beating Alonso and are just trying to beat Sainz and everyone behind, which if that's the case, then Ocon, all he has to do is cover off Carlos Sainz and everyone behind, and Ocon will probably finish in 9th place, which would be another top result. Ocon has had an absolutely brilliant season. And it only continues as Lando Norris now does the fastest lap, 1:15.0. And he's starting to get on with it. As Antonelli has got the gap down to 2.5 seconds. As here comes Hulkenberg. We know the Sauber was quicker down the straights than the Alpine, as something flew off there. But Hulkenberg has got the position. So he's up to 14th. Hulkenberg really has to get through these cars if he's to get a point somehow. As Russell out front, now 4.5 seconds clear of Verstappen. So Verstappen is definitely struggling on those tyres. And I think Max is going to be in the pits in the next 2 or 3 laps at most. Because Antonelli is gaining 0.5 second a lap. And again, if he has to go on a set of mediums to do what? 30, 32 laps, that is not going to be easy at all. That's going to be a very hard final stint. So Max is going to have to tyre save to his absolute best ability in the final stint if he's going to hold on to second, because you've got Norris, Leclerc, Antonelli and Piastri all looking like they could maybe end up on the podium. As Antonelli continuing to catch, as Gasly now told to let Colapinto through, as Hulkenberg passes Lawson. And Colapinto has overtaken Gasly. As we are just over halfway through the race, just want to quickly say, make sure to stay around to the end of the stream, as we will do a bit of a reaction after this race. And as well, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. We do qualifying and race watch-alongs for pretty much every Grand Prix. So make sure to subscribe for more content like this. As Lewis Hamilton on the radio saying, yeah, I'm nowhere in this race, mate. I don't know what is happening. And Ferrari's response is, pace is good, considering the damage. Not sure what damage that is. Hopefully we find out after the race. As on lap 37, Antonelli is now 1.2 seconds behind Verstappen. And yeah, Max is going to have to pit at the end of this lap because he is going to be overtaken by Antonelli. No doubt about it. He was having, you got to say, this is probably by far the best race Antonelli has had in his Formula One career. Mercedes, yes, are very quick, but he is driving a lot better in this race than he has the last few. And heading at the minute for his first ever Formula One podium. Will Max pit? Yes, he does. And will it be a set of mediums he goes on to? As Verstappen is going to come out, I think, in 6th place. Here he comes. And that looks like a set of hard tyres. But it'll be a set of used hard tyres, I'm pretty sure. So that makes life a bit better, but still, towards the end of this race, Max is going to be very close with some drivers out there. And a podium absolutely not guaranteed for Verstappen just yet. He's got a lot of work to do to guarantee that. That pit stop, though, that is good for George Russell because gives him a bit of breathing space. Russell, though, doesn't need to pit probably for another couple laps. If if Mercedes want to just give him an extra couple laps of fresh tyres. Because Max was about 5-6 seconds behind when he pitted. But they decide to pit Antonelli. So they're responding with Antonelli, which is a good decision. As Antonelli pushed hard enough to overcut Verstappen. As 2.2 seconds stop. Where does he come out? This is going to be close. I think he's going to do it. He's going to jump Verstappen here as they come to turn 2. And Antonelli round the outside. Has he got it done? No, Max just grabs the inside and just about comes out ahead. Antonelli, I have to say, was quite slow going round the bend of turn 2 at the exit of the pit lane. But Max just about got that done. But Antonelli needs to calm down and keep it all cool and calm, because he will still have a chance to get Max in these final 30 laps. So there you go. George Russell has not pitted, by the way, stayed out, which is the right decision. He was obviously far enough ahead of Verstappen that he can do this, and he obviously needs that extra 2 or 3 laps or so just to make sure he can come out with a good gap. And if Russell was to pit now, he would come out about 21 seconds ahead of Verstappen. So Russell could probably still go another lap or so before pitting. But Russell will have to overtake Leclerc and Norris still. As here is Oliver Behrman, who is on the hard tyres in 17th place. So, let me just update the order, because, yeah, Liam Lawson has pitted, finally. So, Albon is 19th. Hulkenberg is up to 12th now. Alonso is now 8th. And Russell, yeah, has stayed out. I think Russell probably will come in at the end of this lap, lap 41, or maybe at the end of lap 42. And that will give him a very healthy extra few tyres, or extra few laps, younger tyres compared to Verstappen. And then that should help him then pass Leclerc and Norris to absolutely guarantee race win here in Canada. Is this the start of a George Russell championship bid? It very well could be, because Oscar Piastri, at the minute, is heading for, what, third at best, if he can somehow find his way past Antonelli by the end of the race. So Russell would gain 10 points. And coming into this race, Russell was 75 points behind. So if Mercedes can keep this pace up, that's what it's all about. Can they keep this pace up going forward consistently? If they can, George Russell, we know, is good enough to win races. But it's just about the car. The car's there. He can deliver the results. As Russell is actually pulling away from Max Verstappen. So Russell does not need to pit right now. He can stay out quite a bit longer. As we're looking at the back here of... Is it Gasly? I don't know. But yeah, lots of cars racing here for the last few positions. A lot of these teams were gambling on safety car, which surprisingly has not happened yet. Nib in the chat says, looks like Oscar might be managing for a one-stop. As George Russell told to pit as that was Behrman going off the track, I think, trying to overtake Hadjar, possibly. As yeah, Russell now comes in. And compared to Piastri, it was almost 9 seconds clear, which is half a pit stop. So, lap 43. And Russell makes his stop. Russell will come out comfortably in 4th. And Piastri now takes the lead, and it currently is a McLaren 1-2. Lando Norris, though, I am sure will pit again. Leclerc definitely must pit again because he hasn't used a different type of tyre yet. So Leclerc will probably have to pit no later than lap 50, which is, what, 7 laps away. So Leclerc's going to be in the next few laps. But as Hadjar there has just overtaken Pierre Gasly. And Gasly still hasn't pitted. But yeah, we're now on lap 44. And yeah, George Russell is going to have to keep on it, because if Piastri is on a one-stop strategy, Russell obviously needs to make sure that he catches, passes, and wins this race. Can't take anything for granted. But once they show the gaps again, then I'll get into whether that will work for Piastri, if that's what he is doing. And yeah, Oscar Piastri, right. So Piastri 3 seconds clear of Norris. About, what, just under 8 seconds clear of Leclerc. And then he's about 11 seconds, is it? Clear of Russell, or just about 10.5 clear of Russell. As Oscar says, the car is getting harder to drive, not because of degradation, though. As he ticks over to lap 45. And Piastri is told to box. I was actually about to say, I think they should keep him out another few laps to see whether a one-stop strategy could work, but they've made the decision. And that is music to the ears of George Russell, who surely will go on and win this race. But at least Oscar has gone quite a bit longer, so he will now have fresher tyres to play with. There's Stroll passing Gasly there and squeezing Gasly a bit onto the grass. And yeah, Piastri now comes in. And let's see where Oscar comes out. He's going to come out, I think, behind Antonelli, but it's not going to be by much, as he comes out on his second new set of hard tyres. And yeah, Antonelli is ahead, but only by, what, a second and a half or so. So Piastri now, fresher tyres, he's got to now get on with it. If he wants the podium or even to beat Verstappen in this race, he has got to get on with it, as Lewis Hamilton pits as well. Hamilton will also be going on to another set of hard tyres, and he comes out ahead of Alonso, who Alonso will be pitting at some point for the second time as well. So now, Lando Norris is now in the lead on the medium compound tyre, as Stroll and Gasly incident noted for forcing another driver off the track. Stroll went up the inside of the hairpin, and then down the back straight, Gasly got a run on Stroll. Stroll defended to the inside, and I don't think there's anything worth penalising there. But we'll see what the stewards say. But Norris is 7.5 seconds ahead of Russell on lap 47. As Lando now told to box, as here is Hülkenberg trying to pass Tsunoda into the chicane. Tsunoda, though, defending hard. Remember, Tsunoda has not pitted yet. Still out there on the tyres he started on, as under investigation now, that incident, Stroll and Gasly. As Hülkenberg, he will get this move done in a moment. But Norris will come out obviously behind Piastri, but he's going to have to really give it something in this final 22 laps or so if he's going to get any sort of result. Because I don't think he was quite quick enough, unfortunately, Lando, in that stint. As Lando goes on to a set of hard compound tyres. And now the entire top 10 are on the hard tyres now. The only runner actually in the whole field that's on the medium is Liam Lawson at the very back of the field. As we're watching Hülkenberg still stuck behind Tsunoda. And yeah, Lando Norris is about 11 seconds, I think, or 11.5 seconds or so. As that is a Williams pulling off and behind the barrier of Alex Albon. That should not cause a safety car or virtual safety car. He's behind the barrier at the hairpin, so that should just be a yellow flag. And now they've actually made it green, which is good. I was worried then, because you never know. That sometimes the FIA are very they'll just throw a safety car out for really anything. You can't be sure with them. But yeah, Lando Norris has got 11 seconds to make up in the final 22 laps. So he needs to be, what, 3/4 of a second per lap quicker than Verstappen and overtake Piastri, Antonelli and Verstappen if he's going to get on the podium. I'm not sure that is realistic, as Hülkenberg overtakes Tsunoda. So Hülkenberg up to 11th. I'll be honest, I think Norris and Leclerc are heading for 5th and 6th place, which is, well, for Lando, not good enough, as Lance Stroll gets a 10-second penalty for forcing another drive from the track. I think that's a bit harsh. I don't think Gasly was really that far alongside to really deserve space. He was not really there, to be honest. But who cares at the end of the day? As we're looking here now at Colapinto, who's been behind Bortoleto for quite a while and is trying his hardest to get past. Colapinto has been screwed over really by starting on the medium compound tyre, because he had to pit early and then he's been stuck in the pack for a while, and yeah, it's hurt his race. And that's why he's, even though Bortoleto now pits, Colapinto, I don't think is going to get a point from this race. It'll probably end up 11th or 12th, as Bortoleto pits and will come out in 18th. There's a Behrman and Hadjar incident has been noted. As Oscar Piastri really starting to close in on Antonelli, and Antonelli really starting to close in on Verstappen. And as Nib just said in the chat, the battle for second is about to hot up very nicely, as his just an onboard of Alex Albon having to slow down because of his clear power unit problem. And we heard quite a few laps ago that he had a power unit issue. And yeah, a bad race for Williams, who don't look like, once Carlos Sainz pits, I don't think they're going to score a point in this race, as Lando Norris does a 1:14.4. And Lando is now, I said he was 11 seconds behind Verstappen. It's now, I think, 6 seconds behind. So he is gaining a lot of time, is Norris. As Leclerc still out there. As Alonso has pitted and come out in 12th place. Alonso should be on another set of hard tyres, as Bortoleto down the bottom has put mediums on. And Leclerc is probably going to have to pit in the next couple laps because Russell is about to overtake him. And, well, there's no point. Leclerc, well, actually, Leclerc now asking what we're waiting for to stop. And Ferrari's response is, we don't want to do too many laps of the medium. And Leclerc's response is, I don't get it. The medium for me is a good tyre. Well, for him, it's a good tyre, but in this race, it has not been a good tyre. Plus, I think what Ferrari are also thinking is, if a virtual safety car or a safety car comes out now, they will obviously benefit from that quite a lot. So, really, they may as well keep him out until at least Antonelli or Piastri, whoever is in a net third, makes their way past. Because if they pit now, they're just heading for 6th place. But Piastri is now within a second and Oscar needs this position. And if he can get past Antonelli in this next lap or so, Verstappen is only a couple seconds up the road. And if he can get past him, even if Russell wins this race, that would be still an important result because he would at least beat his 2 championship rivals. As on lap 53, just over 15 laps remain of this very strategic Canadian Grand Prix. And Leclerc about to come up and lap a load of cars, but no, he decides to box. Well, if I was Ferrari, I would have waited a few more laps there, but they're just guaranteeing themselves 6th place now as Russell goes into the lead. Piastri still behind Antonelli and not close enough into turn 1 to make a move as they put on the medium compound tyre. So Leclerc now 6th, Ferrari 6th and 7th, which, to be fair, that is where I predicted they'd finish. And unless we get a safety car, that is where they are going to finish. As Piastri really has got to get this move done. Antonelli, thankfully for Piastri, Antonelli is catching Verstappen still. But Piastri, I think here has got the pace to win. But he's got to get these overtakes done. That's what it comes down to. Is Piastri now drops over a second behind Antonelli, having a poor lap on this occasion. But both McLarens here have got the pace to win. It's all about, can they get the moves done on track to get the win? As George Russell, 2.3 clear of Verstappen in second. Antonelli, 1.3 behind Verstappen. Piastri, half a second behind Antonelli. So Piastri is only, 4 seconds off the lead. That's what I mean. Tantalizingly close. Piastri on much fresher tyres. And that's why he's got to get these overtakes done. Because the win is definitely still on here for McLaren. Don't go anywhere. There's still, I know it's only 15 laps, but that is a long time around this track when the win is on the line. As Pierre Gasly has pitted. Lance Stroll has pitted also. As Piastri, can he get close enough through the hairpin? I think he's trying to get a good exit, but he just can't get a good enough exit to really get close. But let me just correct that the bottom 4 cars are on medium tyres. Piastri's getting close to Antonelli. Is he going to make the move into turn 1? He makes the dive, but I think that was more to distract Antonelli than anything. As Lawson told to box and retire the car. So Lawson out of this race. Another reason Piastri needs to get the move done is because Lando Norris, who's on even fresher tyres, is even quicker than Piastri. He's only a couple seconds behind now. And could be some team orders at play if Piastri keeps behind Antonelli for another few laps. As Verstappen there just lapping the Racing Bull car of Hadjar, I'm pretty sure it is. Yep, it is. Who's in 15th place. And that helps Antonelli because Antonelli gets DRS. And then Piastri really closing in into the chicane, but Hadjar rightly not letting him through because he was too far behind, but that would have hurt Piastri's view a bit into the chicane. But now, no more traffic for these cars for another few seconds. So Oscar needs to launch a proper attack now, as Max Verstappen is actually closing on Russell. The gap down to 1.4 seconds. I do think Russell probably, the reason that gap has gone down like that is because Russell has had to deal with some traffic. Probably has had a worse time of it. But Max keeping it close as Hülkenberg up to 9th. Tsunoda now pits as Russell there lapping Colapinto, I think it is. And yeah, lots of lapping going on. Obviously, this is hampering things for McLaren because it's allowing the cars ahead of them to get DRS and keep themselves ahead, as Tsunoda finally made his pit stop and will come out on the medium compound tyre. As the McLaren there getting held up quite a bit behind Behrman, and that helps Lando Norris close up a bit. And yeah, the top 5 now separated by about I think 4 to 5 seconds. It is incredibly close in these last 12 laps or so, as Ocon and Sainz have pitted, as both McLaren still lapping traffic. This has helped Lando Norris, though, who is now only a second behind his teammate. As the Williams comes out there just ahead of Colapinto. Sainz and Colapinto side by side, and for some reason we're not seeing it. That looked very tasty. And Colapinto has come out ahead. So Colapinto in 11th. As Ocon has pitted, and Ocon is 10th. So Ocon is heading for a World Championship point. What a drive from the Frenchman, who will maintain, I'm pretty sure, his position in the championship, is top 10 position. As Hülkenberg now 8th, but Alonso, who has much fresh tyres, is about to overtake. As Carlos Sainz should overtake Colapinto in a moment. As Lando Norris really closing up to Piastri now. And yes, Sainz has overtaken Colapinto. Sainz is on the mediums, the same as Ocon. So let me just update that as we're on lap 60. So about 10 laps to go. And who will win and finish on the podium in this race? It is still up in the air. Again, we have only, I think, just under 5 seconds separating the top 5. And everyone on the Red Bull pit wall looks incredibly tense because they know Max, he has the oldest tyres out of the top 5. So he, theoretically, should be the slowest out of the top 5. But he's still keeping himself nicely in second, only a couple seconds off the lead. As the two McLarens pushing hard, Norris still right up behind Piastri as Behrman overtakes Colapinto for 12th place. And even though, yes, for the team, it'd probably be better if Piastri let Norris through, there is absolutely no reason that Oscar should be letting him through. As Lando asked on the radio, if there's a safety car now, would you take the soft tyre? And Lando says yes. Of course he's going to say that. He has nothing to lose. But yeah, Oscar just needs to concentrate on what's ahead of him and get after Antonelli. As Lawson under investigation for ignoring blue flags, but Lawson is out of this race, so that doesn't matter anymore. As Norris getting close to Piastri out of the chicane, but still not close enough to go for an overtake, but he is ducking out of the slipstream to at least show Oscar that he's there. But as it stands for the championship, this is not great for the championship leader Piastri, but he would still pull ahead by a couple points ahead of Norris. The gap would be 12 points in Piastri's favour. Max Verstappen, though, would close the gap by 6 points. So Max would be 43 points behind going into the Austrian Grand Prix, a Grand Prix that Max absolutely has to win and has such a good record, obviously, at the Red Bull Ring. So for Piastri, it's, again, not great, but not terrible either. But there is still time for Piastri to maybe gain an extra 3 points or so, which would be crucial for his championship. Is Norris going to go for the move on Piastri into the chicane? No, but he does move out from the slipstream. As Alonso, I've seen, has just overtaken Hulkenberg. Be interesting to see if Hulkenberg hangs on to ninth, because Ocon, of course, is pitted for fresh mediums. So Ocon should be a lot quicker. Hopefully Hulkenberg does hang on, but we'll see. As Piastri just needs to get himself back within a second of Antonelli, and then he can start to properly concentrate on what's ahead of him, but he's still just outside of the 1 second buffer for the DRS. Lando, of course, still has the DRS. Does Piastri have it this time? No. But he will get it back in the next probably lap or so, as they are closing back in on Antonelli, who is starting to drop away from Verstappen. This is a tough final few laps for Antonelli. Can he hang on under the pressure of the two McLarens to claim his first podium in Formula One? Let's find out. As Tsunoda has just overtaken Hadjar for 14th. And Tsunoda's about to overtake Colapinto, it looks like, for 13th place. So at least he'll have some fun towards the end of this race. As Piastri is now within a second of Antonelli. So let's see if Piastri can have a go at the young Italian. He'll get DRS. And thankfully he'll get DRS because Lando was the closest he's been the whole time out of that hairpin. If Oscar didn't have DRS on that occasion, he would have had to have defended into the chicane. But Oscar now has that DRS. Can McLaren get onto the podium? Something I didn't think I'd be saying. I thought McLaren would easily be on the podium here, but they have had a very difficult weekend. The most difficult weekend of their season so far. as Piastri. A bit closer on this occasion, up to turn 8 with the DRS. If he can be half a second or so out of the hairpin behind Antonelli, then I think he's got a proper good chance of an overtake. But that Mercedes through the hairpin is very good. And it was on that occasion. And I think Antonelli will keep ahead. The McLaren got DRS open, but not close enough. The McLaren in the speed trap in qualifying was only about a kilometre or so quicker than the Mercedes. So not much difference. But they're really, these two McLarens starting to harry Antonelli. This is really helping Max Verstappen, who can now breathe a little more. As Sonoda is up to 13th. And Bortoletto is just overtaken Hadjar for 15th. Piastri not looking as close on this occasion, up to turn 8. And McLaren, of course, this season have made the podium in every Grand Prix this season. As Lando Norris sends it at the hairpin and he gets the move done, but Oscar gets a better exit. And they're now going to be side by side down to the chicane. Which McLaren is going to come out on top? They're close, but Norris tries to force his way through, but Oscar forces himself back up the inside and takes the position back. And the two McLarens collide. And Norris, that is almost identical to Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton's crash here in 2011. And Norris is out of the race. The McLarens collide. And that could be a world championship ending collision for Norris. That is a crucial moment as the safety car comes out, but I don't think we'll be seeing any more racing, because by the time that car's cleared, unless they red flag it, then there's not going to be any more racing in this race. But Lando Norris, I need to see a replay. Piastri, obviously defending hard out of the final corner. And yeah, that looked identical to that Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton crash here at the same place in 2011. That time around, it was in the wet, and the reason it happened is because Jenson couldn't see Lewis in the mirrors because of all the rain. But Lando went down the inside of the hairpin. Here's a replay. And Oscar had the inside line. Lando, slightly more straight line speed, I think, with the slipstream of Antonelli ahead. Piastri got ahead. Lando got a better exit. And then Piastri defended. And Lando hit the back of Oscar and broke his front wing. I don't think Oscar made any dramatic changes in his line. We'll see now from Lando's on board. Gets in the slipstream. And no, that is clear driver error by Norris. He hits the back of Piastri. And they ask, "Are you all right, dude?" He says, "Yep, I'm sorry. It's all my bad. All my fault. Unlucky. Sorry. Stupid from me." Good to see he's owned up to it, because it was clearly his fault. He hit the back of Piastri clumsily and went straight into the barriers. If that doesn't sum up Lando Norris's championship bid this year, I don't know what doesn't. And yeah, like I said, it almost completely identical to the Button and Hamilton crash in 2011, but that time around, Hamilton did have his car almost alongside Button. That time around, that was just Lando hitting the back of Piastri. And as Nib said in the chat, Norris drove into a gap that was not there. Absolutely. There was no way he was going to be able, as a Piastri here, having to let through a couple cars there. There was no way he was going to be able to go down the inside. Oscar had clearly positioned his car so that wasn't possible. But there you go. So on lap 68, as Piastri is coming... Oh, he's coming into the pits because they're all coming into the pits. I was going to say, why on earth is that happening? But yeah, they're all coming through the pits. And I know some people out there might say, oh, red flag it so we can get a final couple laps. No, because that would be artificial as fuck. There should only be a red flag thrown when something happens on track to constitute a red flag. So no, we are not having a red flag. And anyone who wants that is, yeah, a DTS fan, as far as I'm concerned. As Lando storms off into the McLaren motorhome. And yeah, that is a crucial mistake. And that means that Oscar Piastri, as Verstappen there's a replay of Verstappen, I think, briefly possibly overtaking Russell under the safety car, but I think that's Russell just braking very hard, maybe trying to get Max an extra penalty point. And yeah, Russell saying Verstappen just overtook me under the safety car, and technically he did, but we'll see what happens with that. But I think that would be a bit soft to give Max a penalty for, given that I don't think he could have done anything because Russell just suddenly and aggressively braked like very, very hard. But yeah, because of that retirement now from Lando Norris, that means Oscar Piastri will be 22 points clear in the Drivers' Championship. Max Verstappen will be 43 points behind Piastri, and Max will be about 21 points behind Norris. So Max is absolutely back in play for the championship. Even though he's not won today, he has gained a few crucial points, which at least he can come away with that. But the day belongs to Mercedes, who this year have had a very good car. They've had a really good season, many podiums. George Russell has been fantastic this year. And as I said a few weeks ago, when he was getting all those podiums in Bahrain and Shanghai and all those races, what I said was, if he gets a car that can win races, he'll start winning races. And this weekend, that is exactly what has happened. Mercedes have finally arrived to the party, and they're about to take their first win of 2025. And maybe this is the start of a George Russell championship bid. That is dependent, though, of course, if Mercedes can keep this pace up. Which, personally, at the next race, I think they can. But going forward consistently, after that, we'll see. Of course, it will also be a debut podium for Kimi Antonelli, who, after having 3 DNFs in a row, or 3 non-points finishes in a row, is about to take his best ever finish in Formula 1. As George Russell, under the safety car, is about to come across the finish line. And George Russell, for the first time in Canada, wins the Canadian Grand Prix. His first win of the year, Mercedes' first win of the year, and Kimi Antonelli in third takes his debut podium in Formula One. There'll be many of those to come in his long Formula One career. Max Verstappen finishes in second. Oscar Piastri, difficult weekend. And fourth only. Leclerc fifth. Hamilton sixth. Alonso seventh. That's a really good amount of points for him. Nico Hülkenberg eighth. What a result for Sauber, who continue to score points. Ocon ninth. Brilliant race from him. Carlos Sainz 10th. Scores points after starting 16th on the grid. And then it was Behrman, Tsunoda, Colapinto, Bortoletto, Hadjar, Gasly, Stroll. The rest of the field. And your retirements, Lando Norris, Liam Lawson, and Alex Albon. Wasn't a great race, but it was certainly a very interesting one strategically. And in the end, we had some drama. So let me just quickly in the chat ask you guys, who is your driver of the day for the Canadian Grand Prix? And there are some options that we have. George Russell, obviously. Antonelli. Hülkenberg. And Ocon I'll put in there as well. My driver of the day. It's actually difficult to say because I thought Hülkenberg and Ocon did a really great job there. I think Hülkenberg as well only did one pit stop in the race. Yeah, I'm going to go Nico Hülkenberg. Yet again. Just like, I think last race we gave driver of the day to him. Yeah, Hülkenberg. Obviously, shout out to Antonelli, first podium. But for me, Hülkenberg has to be driver of the day in that Sauber. And also, yeah, shout out to Ocon. Shout out to Sainz. Nib says driver of the day is Lando Norris. Let me just quickly go through how this now affects the championship standings. So Oscar Piastri is in the lead by 22 points over Lando Norris. Max Verstappen is third. Max is now 43 points off the lead. George Russell is fourth. Russell, coming into this race, was 75 points behind. The gap now 62 points between Russell and Piastri. So if Mercedes can start fighting for wins on a regular basis, I don't see why Russell can't continue to close that gap down. Remember, we've still got, what, another 13, 14 races left in 2025. There is a long way to go in this Formula One season. But again, it all depends on the car, because Russell has proven this season he's absolutely good enough to win races. It's all down to the car. And then, yeah, Leclerc is in 5th, Hamilton 6th, Antonelli 7th, Albon 8th, and then 9th is Ocon, who's gone back up to 9th. And then Hadjar is 10th. Hülkenberg is just behind. I think 1 point behind Hadjar in 11th. What a season Hülkenberg is having. Hülkenberg is ahead of Sainz, Gasly, Tsunoda, Alonso in the championship. Who would have thought that? Nearly midway through the season. And then on the constructor side, McLaren, obviously in the lead. Mercedes are back up to 2nd. And then Ferrari are in 3rd. As, yeah, we're seeing Russell and Anthony there celebrating with the mechanics, which is great to see. So, yeah, Mercedes back up to 2nd, Ferrari 3rd, Red Bull 4th, Williams in 5th. Haas, are they in 6th? I think Haas are back into 6th place now. Level on points with Racing Bulls. Very close fight there in the championship. Aston Martin are back up to 8th. And Aston Martin are only 6 points behind that fight with Racing Bulls and Haas. Sauber as well are less than 10 points away. So that fight between Racing Bulls, Haas, Aston Martin and Sauber really hotting up. Looney Classic says Russell wins one race and now he's already in championship talk. He's 62 points behind. That's not as far behind as it seems. And if he can start putting these types of results together, then yeah, why not? I don't see why he can't win the championship if the Mercedes car remains around about as quick as it is or has been this weekend. It may just be, though, that Mercedes were super quick here and they might not keep that up at the next Grand Prix in Austria. We'll see. But if they do maintain this level of pace, why not? Why not? And that is one reason I cannot wait for the next Grand Prix in Austria, because I think, at least pole position, I think we've got a very exciting four-way fight, as in 4 different teams fighting for pole position in Austria. And it'll be, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes and Ferrari all fighting for pole. And you'll probably have, 5 different drivers all able to get pole position. And if it is as close as I'm hoping, then that could lead to a very close and exciting Grand Prix. So do not miss the next Grand Prix in Austria, because it is going to be a very close, exciting, competitive weekend at the Red Bull Ring in 2 weeks' time. G Walker says, Lewis thinking, what the fuck am I doing with this career? Well, apparently he had damage, so yeah. Even if he didn't have damage, though, I still think he would have finished in 6th place. Looney Classic says, Mercedes are not going to be this quick at all races, bro. They have good races here and there, but are not in championship battle. We'll see. We don't know what's going to happen going forward. They've had a few races where they've been quick enough to be on the podium. Now, they've got, or at least this week, had a race-winning car. Maybe from now on they'll have a race-winning car. We'll have to see. Let's wait to the next Grand Prix. Nib says Lewis ran over a groundhog. Well, yeah, there you go. So, yeah. But like I said, I still think he would have finished in 6th place. So, he would have been a lot closer to Leclerc, but he would have, I still think, finished in 6th. Yanni says Russell the Crybaby drove a solid race and won, which is why Kimi is my number 2. Vince just said Nib is right, almost fell asleep before Lando woke us up. Sarah Gara says Norris is a bottle job. Absolutely. Dustin Salinas says, can they just skip the rest of the race and go to the cool-down room where Max sees Lando running into the back of him? No one that you notice, we need Gotifi. He, people really do forget just how useful and important that man was. Could really spice up a race, that man. KH as my driver of the day is Antonelli. Antonelli absolutely deserves many shots for driver of the day. Personally, I think Hülkenberg, just because obviously 8th in a Sauber should not be possible. But somehow, Hülkenberg does it. He has a great record, Hülkenberg, of finishing in the points here in Montreal. And he's kept it up. I remember, was he 2nd or 3rd in qualifying a couple years ago for Haas? Yeah, he's always loved this place. Looney Classic says Lando is out of the title race. I wouldn't say that, because technically, he's still within a race win in terms of points, but it's so obvious that he's not going to win the championship. How can you look at what he's done so far this season and have really any confidence that he is going to win the championship? I just don't see how you can. If he was not in that McLaren, he would already be out of contention. If he was, say, he was at Ferrari and he was Leclerc's teammate, he'd be behind Leclerc and he'd be way behind because he is not driving anywhere near well enough to deserve to be in a championship battle. And I think deep down he knows that. He's not driving anywhere near well enough to deserve to be racing with the drivers that he is, especially Max Verstappen. But Nib saying Lando just wanted the grass, just like in Japan. Looking back, I don't know. I really don't know why Lando even tried to put his car there. Like, it was so obvious that part of the track, there was no gap. Oscar brilliantly positioned his car, and Lando just clumsily slams into the back of him. Very stupid. NYC says Max was well behaved, had a solid race. Yeah, Max, well, except for that late moment where Max technically overtook behind the safety car. Yeah, Max, I think Max will be satisfied with today's race. He knew he couldn't win today, that Mercedes was just too quick for him today. And Russell has had a top weekend as well. So credit where credit's due. Russell was the man this weekend. But yeah, Max will be satisfied because he has beaten his two championship rivals. So points are gained. But he does need to win the next Grand Prix in Austria if he can, because he needs to now keep up this run of, well, not run, but he needs to claw back points now in the championship, because one more bad result or a DNF and Max at that point might be too far away. Anyway, let me read a final couple comments, and then I'm going to come to the end of the stream because I need to open my window because I can barely breathe. Let me see if I can find. Yanni saying Russell, not Russell. Almost saying it as though he's Dutch. Russell should get a penalty. That was dangerous. Give him one. Maybe Russell was trying to goad Verstappen into getting a penalty, which obviously would be points on his license. But yeah, I don't think Max should, because I don't think Max had any chance to not do what he did. Looney Classic says, I just don't see Max closing that gap. The McLaren's just too good to be beaten 3 races in a row. I think it still does come down to, can Red Bull improve this car again? The Red Bull is closer to the McLaren than it was at the start of the season. There is no doubt about that. But they still need another big upgrade, I think, to really give Max enough for him to properly come back and win the championship. But I still think it's doable, especially if he wins next Grand Prix in Austria. Even if Oscar finishes second, the gap will go down probably to what, 35, 36 points. Remember as well, there is a sprint race in Austria, so if Max can win both the sprint and the race, then that could really help his championship bid. So, yeah, Max absolutely has to win the next Grand Prix. In regards to McLaren, I think definitely Oscar Piastri has to do a better job in Austria than he did here. And McLaren in general need to do a better job because this weekend they just weren't quite good enough. But Piastri definitely needs to win in Austria more than he needed to win here. No doubt. Just to make sure he keeps himself far enough ahead of his rivals. And then we'll see with Ferrari and Mercedes what they do. I think when it comes to the fight for pole, I think Ferrari and Mercedes will be right in there, just like McLaren and Red Bull. So, yeah, qualifying is going to be so exciting. And then hopefully we get a proper mixed up grid for the race. And then final comment, Yanni says the only thing Lando can do is take valuable points here and there and hurt Oscar's chances to beat Max. Yeah, and that might in the end hurt Oscar, but Oscar consistently is still beating Max, or beating Lando, sorry, so that's still all right for him. But that is, guys, your Canadian Grand Prix of 2025. Let me just finish up the results in the poll where I asked you who's your driver of the day. 52 votes and 51% of the vote has gone to Kimi Antonelli, who, of course, has taken his first podium in Formula 1. Congratulations to him. And then Russell, 30% of the vote in second, then Hulkenberg, and then Ocon. Thanks to you guys coming along for the streams this weekend. Been great to have you guys along. Obviously, if you're a new subscriber, hello to you and welcome to the channel as well. I don't know if any of you guys have noticed, but I have ticked over to 14,000 subs, which I know is a very small milestone. We were on 13,000 and whatever for quite a while, it felt like. But yeah, now on 14,000. Hopefully I can maybe end the year on 15,000 or something like that. But yeah, cheers for that. And yeah, cheers for coming along for the streams this weekend. Before you go, if you haven't already, smash a like button. And yeah, remember the plan, content-wise, between now and the next Grand Prix, is tomorrow I will be uploading a podcast reviewing the Canadian Grand Prix. And then on Friday, there will be a video covering a topic to do with, obviously, this Formula 1 season. I don't know yet what that topic is going to be. I will know tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll be recording the audio for that particular video. But yeah, that video, whatever it is, it will be out on Friday. And then, of course, about a week later is the Austrian Grand Prix. And remember, I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch along for that weekend. And I'll be joined by Niblo on commentary for the race. He'll be back for the race watch along. And, of course, there'll be a podcast the day after the race reviewing the events at the Red Bull Ring. So make sure to come along to all that content coming up in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, cheers for coming along for the content this weekend. And until my podcast tomorrow, reviewing all of what happened here in Canada, it has been me, Chazzer HD. Goodbye.